Chapter 1234. If someone thought that the underground tomb of Nasaric was gloomy because it was underground, then they were completely wrong. Indeed, in the great catacombs beneath Nasaric, there were dark places. After all, the underground tomb of Nasaric was made up of 10 underground spaces. Among them, the first, second, and third floors of the underground tomb of Nasaric were in the form of tombs. The fourth floor was an underground lake. The fifth floor was an ice river. The sixth floor was a jungle. The seventh floor was magma. The eighth floor was a wilderness. To say that the first 8 floors of the underground tomb of Nasaric were gloomy was to underestimate the stronghold of a powerful guild that could do anything in the game. However, this was only true for the first 8 floors of the underground tomb of Nasaric. The 9th floor of the Nasaric catacombs was as solemn and sacred as a chalk castle. Every room was a standard royal suite. It couldn't be any more luxurious. Compared to the first 8 floors, it was like a place of heaven. Naturally, such a place wouldn't be gloomy. The rainbow-colored crystal lamp hanging from the ceiling emitted light that was extremely gentle and beautiful. That was the light from a magic tool called perpetual light. Just like the name of the magic item, as long as there was enough magic, this light would never be extinguished. With such a magic item as a light source, even if the 9th floor of the underground tomb of Nasaric wanted to be gloomy, it wouldn't be gloomy. It was likely that anyone walking in the hallway would be moved by the beauty of this place. This was especially true for the people in the great underground tomb of Nasaric. There was no one who would not be moved when they walked on this floor that was originally occupied by the creators. Therefore, for the people in the underground tomb of Nasaric who were willing to give up everything to be loyal to the Supreme Sovereign, all the scenes and decorations here were worth loving. Every time they walked on this floor, everyone in the underground tomb of Nasaric would feel happy and reaffirm their loyalty to the creators. If someone didn't like the scenery here, then they weren't loyal enough to the Supreme Sovereign, or they had disloyal thoughts. That was the unanimous thought of everyone in the great tomb under Nasaric. Even Xiataya thought the same. However, this time, Zaisha did not feel happy at all. Instead, she felt unusually heavy. It wasn't just her mood. Even her footsteps were unbelievably heavy. Her beautiful face was filled with gloom. There was even a faint trace of despair on her face. What should I do? When Xiataya woke up from her dream and recalled everything that had happened, she almost fainted. This was because Xiataya remembered the person she was loyal to even if it cost her life. She swung her weapon. Why is it like this? Xiataya covered her face and was on the verge of crying. That must be a dream, right? After waking up from her sleep, Xiataya had told herself this more than once. There was no other way. Even Zatia herself did not want to believe that she had actually pointed her gun at the person she needed to be loyal to. That was tantamount to betrayal. No. In fact, that was betrayal. Even though Xiataya was under mental control at that time, it was just like what Yair Bade said. A mistake was a mistake, and a betrayal was a betrayal. Even if she had no choice, it was the truth. Xiataya could not forgive herself for that. It wasn't just because Noah was the person Satya had to pledge her loyalty to, it was also because Noah was the person Satya loved. Of course, there was something wrong with this love. In the game era, Xiataya's creator had set her up as a person with all kinds of inexplicable hobbies. Bisexual, sadist, masochist, necrophilia. All kinds of special fetishes that ordinary people wouldn't dare to compliment were gathered in Xiataya's body. When they first met, Noah used overwhelming strength to send all the guardians flying. When he used this as a test, it accidentally aroused the masochistic part of the vampire girl's heart. Since then, Xiataya had fallen madly in love with Noah. In this way, who could say that this kind of love was right? But there was no doubt that Xiataya did have special feelings for Noah. Waving her gun at the person she needed to be loyal to even if she had to die. Becoming an enemy of the person she loved the most. Under the double blow, the guilt in Xiataya's heart was even stronger than Yair Bade and Demiurgos had imagined. Boo-hoo! Xiataya covered her face, and her voice sounded like she was about to cry. How good would it be if I could atone for my sins with death? For the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasaric, death was definitely the easiest way to atone for their sins. This was because they had long decided to dedicate their lives to the supreme ruler of the underground tomb of Nasaric. If possible, Xiataya really wanted to commit suicide now and end everything. However, Noah had ordered Xiataya to see him immediately after she woke up. Between death and orders, Xiataya chose the latter without hesitation. It was not that Xiataya was afraid of death. Instead, compared to death, Noah's orders were truly important. If she died under Noah's orders, she would be disobeying Noah's orders. Xiataya had already betrayed Noah once, so how could she disobey Noah's orders again? Therefore, no matter how heavy her footsteps were, Xiataya could only choose to continue. In fact, to Xiataya, it didn't matter if she was reprimanded by Noah. Taking her life or committing suicide to atone for her sins wasn't a problem at all. What Xiataya was truly afraid of was seeing Noah's disappointed expression. What should she do if she was abandoned by the supreme ruler she had to be loyal to, even if she had to give up her life? How terrifying would it be if she disappointed her master? If Noah no longer trusted Xiataya because of this, it would definitely be countless times more painful than death for her. If that happens, I won't be forgiven even if I lose my life, Xiataya couldn't help but mutter under her depression. If Lord Noah is disappointed in Nasariq because of this and leaves this place. Before she could finish her sentence, Xiataya's delicate body trembled violently as if she couldn't imagine such an outcome. She shook her head desperately. No. That can't be. That can't happen. Lord Noah is the most benevolent supreme ruler in this world. A benevolent king who can even save inferior creatures like humans. He definitely won't abandon us. It was as if Xiataya had deliberately said these words to convince herself. However, this sentence made the uneasiness in Xiataya's heart even more intense, making her footsteps even heavier. She walked forward with an ashen expression. As time passed, no matter how heavy Xiataya's footsteps were, she still arrived at the door of Noah's room. To Xiataya's surprise, there were two figures in front of the door. Yair and Demiugos. As if noticing Xiataya's arrival, Yair and Demiugos focused their gazes on her at the same time. At that moment, Xiataya didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that Yair and Demiugos' gazes were full of blame. This made Xiataya, who was already very uneasy, panic. Why are you here? Yair and Demiugos fell silent at the same time. Then Demiugos spoke up. We came to report to Lord Noah because the results of the research on the maintenance costs of the underground tomb in Nasariq have come out. The maintenance costs of the underground tomb in Nasariq used to be the gold coins in Yggdrasil. Now, there was no longer a channel to obtain the gold coins in Yggdrasil. The underground tomb in Nasariq had to confirm whether the money in this world could be used for maintenance costs. This result was enough to affect the future development of the underground tomb in Nasariq. Compared to Yair and Demiugos, who were running around for this important matter, Xiataya, who had been controlled by the enemy and brought trouble to Noah, was simply too incompetent. Xiataya lowered her head guiltily. At that moment, Yair spoke. Since you're here, let's go in together. Xiataya could only nod. Chapter 1235. Kacha. With the sound of the door opening, Yair Demiugos, and the restless Satya entered Noah's room together. The luxurious suite was presented in front of the three guardians of Nasariq's underground tomb, causing a trace of solemnity to rise in the hearts of the three guardians. Coming to the residence of the supreme ruler of Nasariq's underground tomb, no NPC would not feel solemn. Even Xiataya, who was feeling extremely uneasy, was the same. Even Demiugos subconsciously lowered his voice. It seems that Lord Noah is still resting for the time being. In the underground tomb of Nasariq, all the creatures were of the xenomorph type. These xenomorph creatures almost never tired, didn't need to eat, and didn't need to rest or sleep at all. Therefore, xenomorph creatures were very troublesome to deal with for humans. For example, if humans and the undead were to go to war, then the undead's advantage would be simply unimaginable. Can you imagine, when you are exhausted from fighting on the battlefield, the lowest level skeleton is still waving its sword vigorously from start to finish? Can you imagine, when you haven't slept for 3 days and 3 nights, when you're really sleepy, the lowest level skeleton is still charging? Can you imagine, when your body urgently needs to replenish its food and recover its physical strength, the scene of the lowest level skeleton still relentlessly launching attacks? For humans, fatigue, sleep, and food were indispensable. However, the lowly undead didn't have such problems. Therefore, if humans and the undead were to go to war, the undead army could continuously fight a war of attrition. As long as they fought for 7 days and 7 nights without stopping, then no matter how large the human army was, it would be finished. Moreover, the human army needed food, but the undead army didn't. They could wait until the human army ran out of food, then the humans would be finished. In view of this, in the eyes of the undead, and even in the eyes of other races, humans who had no special abilities, were born with extremely low physical conditions, and had all kinds of needs were inferior creatures. Because the human race was too troublesome and too fragile, wasn't it? That's what everyone in the great tombs of Nasarick was thinking. Only Noah was an exception. To be more precise, in the eyes of everyone in the underground tomb of Nasarick, humans were reduced to inferior existences because of the need to rest. But when it came to Noah, they were instantly glorified. Ah! Ah! Yair Bade clenched his hands tightly in front of him as if his heart was aching. He's actually still resting now. This must be the result of Lord Noah working so hard for the matter of Nasarick, right? We, the benevolent and merciful supreme beings, have worked too hard. Demiurgos lowered his head guiltily. If we could be more useful and help share Lord Noah's burden, Lord Noah wouldn't have to work. Siataya didn't say anything, but her heart ached for Noah. The heavens took pity on him. Noah was just resting normally. If Noah were to know that the fact that he fell asleep on the bed was seen by the guardians as the result of working hard, he would definitely be embarrassed, right? Then, should we wake Lord Noah up? Satya asked softly. I feel that waking up an utmost exalted is a very rude and disrespectful thing to do. What do you all think? Zatia is right. Yair Bade sighed. If possible, I also hope that Lord Noah can rest well. Unfortunately, Lord Noah has already instructed that once there is a result on the maintenance costs of the underground tomb of Nasarick, we must report it even if he's resting. Demiurgos looked at Satya. Moreover, Lord Noah ordered you to see him immediately after you wake up. If you continue to procrastinate after waking up, I think Lord Noah will be angry, right? Hearing this, Satya's shoulders drooped. Then what should we do? There's no other way. Yair Bade took a deep breath and said righteously. Although it's very disrespectful, let me wake up Lord Noah. As she said this, a blush suddenly appeared on Yair Bade's serious and charming face, and her expression also became undulating. I heard that among humans, servants have to do something called a morning kiss to wake up their master. Only then will their master be in a good mood. Sure enough, I can only do this important task. Yair Bade's words made Satya, who had been feeling uneasy, raise her eyebrows, and a disdainful smile appeared on her young but exceptionally beautiful face. Forget it. If Lord Noah is kissed by a big-mouthed gorilla like you, his mood will only deteriorate, right? In that case, wouldn't it be worse for you? Yair Bade's youthful expression stiffened at Satya's words. After a slight distortion, it turned into a disdainful smile. If Lord Noah knew that a vampire approached him while he was asleep, I'm afraid he would be frightened awake no matter how good his dream is, right? This time, it was Satya's pretty face that stiffened and became slightly distorted. The two girls, one big and one small, emitted an evil aura that represented anger, causing the air in the room to become somewhat gloomy and cold. Just as Demiurgos felt that he should stop them, a weak voice sounded. What are you doing? Satya and Yair Bade were startled at the same time. Together with Demiurgos, they looked toward the source of the voice. There, a neatly dressed Noah stood at the door of the bedroom, looking at Satya and Yair Bade with narrowed eyes. Don't release that evil aura in someone else's room. If I hadn't woken up, I would have been frightened awake by you, right? Lord Noah. The three guardians hurriedly knelt down on one knee. I'm very sorry. Forget it, I'm not really blaming you. Noah yawned, still looking a little sleepy. What time is it now? Lord Noah. Demiurgos lowered his head and said, according to the time on the surface, it should be around 7 o'clock in the morning. Is that so? Noah patted his cheeks and forced himself to wake up. Then, let's talk inside. After that, Noah walked directly to the inner office, opened the door, and walked in. Yair Bade, Satya, and Demiurgos looked at each other, stood up, and walked into the office with Noah. In the luxurious office, as soon as Noah sat on the black leather chair, Yair Bade immediately stepped forward. Lord Noah, regarding the issue of the maintenance cost of the Nasarick underground tomb, we have already come to a conclusion. Is that so? Noah nodded and said. But, Let's talk about this later. Yair Bade was slightly startled, then immediately understood what Noah meant. Under such circumstances, Noah turned his head and cast his gaze on Satya. Satya. Yes. Satya probably didn't expect to be called so suddenly. Her shoulders trembled violently, and her voice was abnormally loud. I'm here. At that moment, Satya's heart was filled with an extremely strong sense of uneasiness. Before discussing the important issue related to the future development of the Nasaric underground tomb, Noah chose to talk to Satya first. Does that mean that compared to the most important issue of the future development of the Nasaric underground tomb, Satya's betrayal is more serious? When she thought of this, Satya could not hide her uneasiness. However, the next moment, Noah said such a sentence. There shouldn't be any problems with your body, right? Such a sentence made Satya, who thought she would be reprimanded, stunned at first. Then, a look of guilt appeared on her face. Chapter 1236. There was no doubt that the cost of maintaining the underground tomb of Nasaric was unimaginably important to the entire underground tomb of Nasaric. Ever since the underground tomb of Nasaric had officially become operational, Yair Bade and Demiugos had been experimenting with the idea of finding out if the other gold coins could be used in addition to Yggdrasil. If they could be used, it would have a huge impact on the underground tomb of Nasaric. For the sake of the cost of summoning the high-level non-automatic rebirth monsters in the underground tomb of Nasaric, as well as the cost of activating the magic used in the base, as well as the cost of resurrecting NPCs when they died, and so on, once it was confirmed that the other gold coins could be used, the underground tomb of Nasaric would be able to develop rapidly while ensuring that they would be able to get enough money. After all, just by investing a large amount of money to summon a batch of high-level monsters, they would be able to increase the power and strength of the underground tomb of Nasaric at an extremely high efficiency. Although they still had to consider the various expenses that the underground tomb of Nasaric would need in the future, it was still better than not developing at all. If they couldn't use gold coins other than Yggdrasil to maintain the underground tomb of Nasaric, their future development would be greatly limited. Hence, this question was definitely the most important of all the matters in the underground tomb of Nasaric. Before Noah listened to such an important matter, he first called out to Satya. What did that mean? It meant that Satya's matter was more worthy of Noah's attention than such an important question. Initially, Satya thought that Noah was going to question her about her betrayal. However, Noah first asked about Satya's physical condition. Didn't that mean that in Noah's heart, Satya's safety was more important than the development of the underground tomb of Nasaric? However, Satya thought that Noah was going to question her. For the benevolent and merciful Supreme Overlord, how disrespectful and impolite was this? Wasn't it simply gauging the stature of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain? Lord Noah. Satya, who was full of guilt, could no longer bear it. She knelt on one knee and cried out in grief. Undoubtedly, as a guardian, I have committed such a stupid and serious crime. Please give me the harshest punishment. There was even a trace of pain in Satya's voice. However, Yair Bade and Demiugos could understand Satya's feelings very well. As long as it was an NPC in the underground tomb of Nasaric, they would be able to understand her feelings. Right. She had the purest of loyalty, but she had done something that she would never be willing to do. Even if she was controlled, it would be unforgivable to the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasaric. If it's possible, I hope that I can atone for my sins with death. No, please give me a punishment that even death cannot compare to. Satya's voice sounded like a sob. Otherwise, I really can't forgive myself. Satya's Yair Bade and Demiugos kept their mouths shut. Noah looked at Satya, who was holding back her tears with a guilty expression, and sighed deeply. Satya, regarding your mind control, I am also in the wrong as the one who gave you the order. It can be said that I am the one who indirectly caused you to be controlled, so I really don't want to punish you. Furthermore, you didn't have a choice. I know that the benevolent and merciful Lord Noah will definitely forgive my stupidity. Satya hurriedly said. However, that was my fault for not being able to complete the mission given to me by the Supreme Sovereign and being controlled by the enemy. Lord Noah is definitely not wrong. Yair Bade and Demiugos inwardly nodded. Although Satya had acted because of Noah's orders, not only did she not complete the mission, but she also ended up being controlled by the enemy. That was because Satya was incompetent. No matter how they thought about it, it should not be Noah's fault. That was what Yair Bade and Demiugos were thinking. Of course, Noah definitely did not have the same thoughts. However, looking at the sorrowful Satya, Noah was also struggling in his heart. It was just like what Yair Bade and the others said. Even if Noah thought that he was also in the wrong, Satya would definitely put all the blame on herself. If this sense of guilt was not properly relieved, it would definitely become an irremovable thorn in Satya's heart, right? Sometimes, being too loyal was not always a good thing. Noah immediately stood up from the black leather chair. Under Satya's stunned expression, he directly walked in front of her and knelt down on one knee like her. Lord Noah. Yair Bade and Demi-Yugos were shocked. Satya shuddered and almost fainted. Now, the supreme ruler of the Nasaric underground tomb, the person whom everyone here was willing to sacrifice everything to be loyal to, was actually kneeling in front of a subordinate. If it weren't for the fact that there were only a few people here, perhaps the entire Nasaric underground tomb would have panicked. In this regard, Noah didn't care at all. He maintained the same height as Satya, looked into her eyes, and said very seriously, Shadya, you know that you definitely feel a strong sense of guilt for what happened this time, but I feel the same way about it. After saying this, Noah extended his hand and gently stroked the head of the trembling Satya, who was almost scared out of her wits, as he spoke in a gentle voice. Even if you say that it's not my fault, there is no doubt that if I hadn't underestimated the people from the Sealien cult nation and thought that you could easily take them down with your strength, which was why I casually gave the order and didn't consider the consequences carefully, you definitely wouldn't have been controlled. So, just like you, my fault can't be covered up. Noah shook his head gently. I know that you definitely won't accept my words, but at least let me apologize to you. I'm sorry, Satya. Sir Noah. Satya stared at Noah absent-mindedly. If you must punish me, then for your sake I can do as you wish. Noah met Satya's gaze. But you have to remember that you're not allowed to mention anything about using death as an apology in the future. You once swore to me that you would give everything you have to me. You also said that your lives were all mine. Then, you carried all of my belongings with you, but when you made a mistake, you used my belongings to apologize. That's not right, is it? Noah's gaze swept across Yair Bade, Demi-Yugos, and Zaisha as he spoke. So, all of you remember that your lives are mine. Without my permission, you're not allowed to lose them. Do you hear me? These words turned into a surge of heat that surged in the hearts of Yair Bade, Satya, and Demi-Yugos. Without any hesitation, Yair Bade and Demi-Yugos knelt on one knee at the same time. Together with Satya, who had her head lowered, they let out a voice that seemed to burst out from the depths of their souls. Yes, sir. Noah smiled faintly and stood up. He bent down and lifted Satya's chin, a slightly malicious smile on his face. As for Satya, your punishment will be left for tonight. Tonight? Satya was startled at first. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and widened her eyes in ecstasy. Could it be? What is it? Noah said as if he was tempting a child. Come to my room tonight and you'll understand. Yes. Satya's voice was louder than before, and everyone could sense the joy in it. However, at this moment, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. Night room. Punishment in the room at night. Yair Bada lowered his head, and a smile appeared on his face as if he had broken it. That scene was enough to scare an ordinary person to death. Chapter 1237. After a while, Satya happily left Noah's office with a completely different mood from when she first arrived. Thus, only Noah, Yair Bade, and Demi-Yugos were left in the entire office. However, the three of them were in completely different moods. Noah was as relaxed as if he had solved an important matter, and sat back down on the black leather chair. Yair Bade was brimming with resentment. He looked at Noah like a resentful woman who had been left out of her room. His eyes were filled with resentment. Demi-Yugos, on the other hand, was still touched by Noah's words just now, and he cast a look of respect and longing at Noah. Noah, who had already expected Yair Abed's obvious resentment, ignored it, and acted as if nothing had happened. He spoke to Yair Abed and Demi-Yugos. Well, Satya's matter has been resolved. Tell me what you plan to report. Yes. Demi-Yugos lowered his head and replied. Then, he hurriedly nudged Yair Bade and gave him a look. Yair Bade pursed his lips and looked extremely unwilling, but he also knew that now was not the time to be jealous and envious. He could only stand up reluctantly. Sir Noah. Yair Bade adjusted his mood, and his beautiful face regained its calmness. Like I said just now, we have already come to a conclusion about the cost of maintaining the big underground tomb in Nasariq. Is that so? Noah leaned forward a little and asked seriously. So, what's the result? The result is very gratifying. Yair Bade shared the good news. Whether it's the gold coins in Yggdrasil, the gold coins from this world brought back from the surface, or even the gold coins given by Sir Noah, they can all be used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasariq. Hearing this, Noah's eyes suddenly lit up. This was indeed an extremely good piece of news. If the gold coins of this world could really be used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasariq, then there would be no need to deliberately save the gold coins in Yggdrasil in the treasure hall of Nasariq's underground tomb. They could develop without worry. In particular, the news that the gold coins given by Noah could also be used was even better. With a treasure house that could produce unlimited gold coins, there would be no need to worry about the cost of maintaining the big underground tomb in Nasariq in the future. At this moment, Demiurgos said. However, we found that the 3 different types of gold coins used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasariq have completely different degrees of consumption. Completely different degrees of consumption? Noah asked in confusion. What's going on? This is the final confirmation after many experiments, Yair Bade replied. We found that the different types of gold coins used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasariq have different degrees of consumption. For example, if we use 3 different types of gold coins to summon the same type of monster, the degree of consumption is completely different. Demiurgos presented a prepared report. Sir Noah can take a look at the details. Noah did not hesitate and directly took the report from Demiurgos and began to read it. After a while, Noah understood what was going on. Simply put, the 3 types of gold coins used to do the same thing were completely different degrees of consumption. For example, if he used the gold coins in Yggdrasil to summon a level 70 monster, he would need to spend 100,000 gold coins. However, if he used the gold coins of this world to summon a monster of the same level, type and race, he would need to spend 200,000 gold coins. If he used the gold coins that Noah took out from the gate of Babylon, he would only need to spend 10,000 gold coins to summon the same monster. Other than the summoning of the monster, the rest of the costs showed the same result. In other words, for the big underground tomb in Nasariq, the value of the gold coins that Noah took out from the gate of Babylon was 10 times greater than the value of the gold coins in Yggdrasil. The gold coins in Yggdrasil were twice as valuable as the gold coins in this world. Naturally, under such circumstances, the expenditure of the 3 types of gold coins for the same purpose would naturally be different. After this experiment, we are sure of one thing. Yair Bade smiled slightly. That is, the problem of the maintenance cost of the big underground tomb in Nasariq can be used as long as it is gold coins. And the amount of money consumed is completely dependent on the gold content, Demiurgos said. Among the 3 types of gold coins, the gold coins that Lord Noah gave us have the highest gold content, so the consumption time is also the least. The gold coins in Yggdrasil have the second highest gold content, which is only 1/10 of the value of the gold coins that Lord Noah gave us. As for the gold coins in this world, they have the least gold content. Compared to the gold coins in Yggdrasil, their value is only half, Yair Bade continued. Therefore, we are sure that the difference in cost is determined by the gold content. As long as it is gold coins, no matter where they come from, they can be used. So that's how it is. Noah came to a realization and smiled. In that case, we don't have to spend so much effort to earn money on the surface anymore, right? No, the money in this world still has its value. Demiurgos shook his head. According to the information we have, in this world, different human countries use different gold coins. It is generally difficult to use the gold coins of other countries in another country. Presumably, apart from the gold coins of this world, it will be slightly troublesome to use the 2 types of gold coins we have in this world. And when the people in the big underground tomb in Nasariq make items, they need to consume materials. These will need to be obtained from this world in the future. Yair Bade nodded. If we have the gold coins of this world, then we can buy a large amount of materials from this world to make all kinds of items. That's true. Noah also nodded. This can indeed avoid a lot of trouble. In addition, we also found a coin box in Nasariq, Demiurgos said with a smile. That is a tool used to exchange gold coins in Yggdrasil. As long as you put an item in, the coin box will be able to appraise the value of the item and exchange it for gold coins in Yggdrasil of the same value. What? Noah suddenly smiled helplessly. So there is a way to obtain gold coins in Yggdrasil? Then wouldn't my efforts be in vain? You can't say that, Yerbade quickly said. After all, compared to gold coins, all kinds of items and magical tools are undoubtedly more useful. It would be a waste to put them in the coin box. Moreover, the value of the items appraised by the coin box will definitely be lower than the original value of the item. Even if you let someone with a merchant profession operate it, it will still be much lower than the original value. Demiyugos agreed. So, as for the coin exchange box, it's better not to use it unless it's absolutely necessary. Noah nodded in understanding. Regardless of the value, compared to gold coins, Noah naturally hoped to obtain magical tools with all kinds of wonderful uses. If he ran out of gold coins, he could think of other ways to obtain them. However, if he ran out of precious magical tools, it would definitely be much harder to obtain them than gold coins. Moreover, compared to carrying money with him, magical tools that could be used at critical times were undoubtedly much more precious. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Noah would not exchange his precious items for gold coins. Thus, Noah stood up. All of you, come with me to the library. Yerbade and Demiyugos both nodded. Chapter 1238. On the 10th floor of the underground tomb of Nassarik, there was a huge library. It was a dark brown library. The atmosphere in the air was very calm, and there was a gentle magical light that illuminated every corner of the library. The high ceiling was circular. There was a huge door outside. The size of the door was comparable to the door of the throne room. On both sides of the door, there was a gorm that was more than 3 meters tall. The gorms had the appearance of a warrior, and their bodies flickered with a luster that normal stones or metals could not have. It was obvious that they were made from extremely rare materials. Although they were inanimate objects and their auras could not be sensed, the solemn atmosphere around the two gorms told others that they were definitely much stronger than normal gorms. With Noah in the lead, Yerbade and Demiyugos on his left and right like bodyguards, the three of them arrived in front of the huge door guarded by the gorms. If it was anyone else in the underground tomb of Nassarik, they would have knelt down upon seeing Noah. However, the gorms did not have intelligence, nor were they living creatures. They were just weapons, so they naturally did not have such knowledge. Thus, Yerbade and Demiyugos could not reprimand the two gorms for being rude, and Yerbade spoke loudly. "Open the door." Reacting to Yerbade's words, the gorms standing on both sides of the door suddenly moved. Like stone giants and robots, the two gorms clumsily moved to the side and slowly pushed open the huge door. In the next moment, a space that was more like an art gallery than a library appeared in front of Noah's eyes. It was a space with all kinds of huge bookshelves. The walls, floor, and even the bookshelves were decorated with countless decorations. There was not even a speck of dust on the bright and clean floor, and beautiful patterns were drawn on it. There was also a huge wet mural on the ceiling. From here, one could see the second floor on both sides. After all, above the wall, there was a stand that protruded outwards. There were also rooms with entrances, and bookshelves were placed in the rooms. It looked like a heavenly kingdom of books. A few glass display cabinets with extremely precious books that were obviously different from ordinary books also entered Noah's eyes. A tranquil atmosphere filled the air. Noah, Yerbade and Demiyugos walked into the library together. The door behind them was slowly closed by the two gorms. Right now, Noah, Yerbade, and Demiyugos were in a place called the Realm of Reason. The huge library that existed in the 10th floor of the Great Tomb of Nassarik was divided into 3 sections: the space of knowledge, the space of reason, and the space of magic. Noah looked around and exclaimed as he walked along the aisles separated by bookshelves. "Is this the library on the 10th floor of the Nassarik catacombs?" In fact, Noah already knew about the existence of this library. That was because some of the books stored in this library were extremely precious to the Great Tomb of Nassarik. The books here could be divided into 5 types. The first type was the summoning book used to summon monsters. The summoning of high-level magical creatures that were not automatically reborn required a summoning ritual and a corresponding amount of money before it could be carried out. The item required for the summoning ritual was the summoning book. If one did not use the summoning book but used summoning magic to summon monsters, Then the monsters that were summoned were the most common and low-level monsters. The monsters that were summoned using the summoning book were not only very rare, but their levels were also much higher than ordinary monsters. Even their magic, skills, and races were very rare. The second type was the item book used to store magical props. Some special and precious magical props with very powerful effects and functions were stored in these item books. The third type was the magic book used to use them. In Yggdrasil, sometimes, if one wanted to change into a specific profession or race, they would need the corresponding items. Among them, there were many items in the form of books. For example, the Book of the Dead that could transform people into undead, the Seed of the Fallen that could transform people into demons, and the Wings of Ascension that could transform people into angels, and so on. Using these items could allow one to change into a specific profession or even race. In Yggdrasil, such items had different values depending on the race and class of the player. The magic book stored here was the kind of item that could be used to change one's profession or race to an extremely precious profession. The fourth type was the information book used to create equipment, items, and items. The creation of some precious equipment, items, and items could not be done by just anyone. It was like a blueprint. The creation of precious equipment, items, and items required these information books in addition to materials. With these information books, as long as one had the required forging skills and materials, one could create the items recorded in them. As for the fifth type, they were novels. Most of them were classic novels that were widely circulated in the original world, or novels with the background of the game as the story. There were even original novels written by players in Yggdrasil, as well as second novels and game guides. Noah's goal on this trip was the first four types of books. The summoning books and information books were intended to be given to Yair Bade and Demi-Yugos for their use. They would be used to summon monsters and create items, thus expanding the power and influence of Nazarik's underground tomb. The item books and magic books had wonderful uses. Naturally, Noah wanted to collect them. While expanding the treasury, he also wanted to prepare for an emergency. Of course, most of the summoning books and information books here had backups. Noah also planned to collect those books. Perhaps, in other worlds, if he needed manpower or specific items, Noah could make preparations with these summoning books and information books. "It's just that there are so many books here," Noah exclaimed. Apart from the novels and guides, the summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books are all very useful and precious. There are so many of them here? The main ones are the novels and guides. Compared to the novels and guides, the other four types of books don't even add up to 1% of the total, right? Yair Bade said in an admiring tone. Even so, the number of summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books here is quite shocking. To be able to collect so many precious items, as expected of the supremes of the past. Demi-Yugos nodded in agreement. He then turned his head and looked at Noah. "Lord Noah, since you're here, would you like to see the scribe of the library?" "The scribe of the library?" Noah nodded as he recalled the information about this NPC. "That's fine. I also want to see how far the production of scrolls has progressed." After saying this, Noah walked forward. After an unknown amount of time, an inner door appeared in front of Noah. Yair Bade and Demi-Yugos immediately went forward and opened the door. Immediately, a spacious room with huge bookshelves appeared in front of Noah's eyes. Upon closer inspection, the bookshelves were not filled with books, but with all kinds of miscellaneous items. There were ores, metals, gems, powders, and organs of unknown creatures on the bookshelves. These things were all materials needed to make scrolls. In addition, there was a large amount of parchment, either rolled up on the bookshelves or bundled up on the ground. They filled the entire room. In the center of the room was a large stone platform. On the side of the platform stood a skeleton. It was a skeleton that was a mixture of human and animal bones. It was only about 150 centimeters tall, had 2 horns on its head, 4 fingers, and hoof-shaped toes. It wore a long robe, had a turban on its head, and had pieces of cloth wrapped around its waist. Chapter 1239. Noah discovered that the skeleton standing at the edge of the stone platform not only had a strange appearance, but it was also wearing a lot of extraordinary equipment. A silver bracelet with 7 gems was worn on his wrist. On its neck was a golden amulet. On its fingers were rings of various shapes and colors. Its waist was also adorned with gem-like accessories, and there were also many scrolls tied to it. These equipment were all very powerful magic tools. Since it was able to wear so many magic tools, this seemingly extraordinary skeleton was naturally not an ordinary undying. Its name was Dietorius Anus Shectus. He was in charge of guarding this library, and was given the position of scribe. He was an NPC who specialized in crafting professions. In terms of combat power and level, Dietorius was not as good as a group of guardians who had reached the maximum level of 100. However, in terms of crafting professions, Dietorius was the #1 person in charge of the entire Nasaric underground tomb. This was especially true for the production of scrolls, as the scribe was the one who took up most of the responsibility. Without this scribe, the various tools that could be produced in the Nasaric underground tomb would definitely be of a lower grade. Therefore, although Noah had not seen Dietorius before, he at least knew of his existence. On the other side, Dietorius, who was studying a piece of parchment spread out on the stone platform in front of him, finally seemed to notice the situation at the door and raised his head. In the next second, when he saw Noah being protected by Yair Bade and Demiurgos, a scarlet light suddenly flashed in the eye sockets of Dietorius' skull, as if he was frightened and quickly walked out of the stone platform. Then, Dietorius respectfully knelt in front of Noah. "Welcome, Lord Noah." Although they had not directly met each other, because of the settings, all the NPCs in the Nasaric underground tomb clearly knew who they were loyal to. In the past, Noah thought that if they had not met each other, the NPCs in the Nasaric underground tomb would not know that they were loyal to him. Therefore, he walked around the tomb with an indifferent attitude. In the end, there was almost a huge commotion. Since then, Noah understood that although the NPCs in the Nasaric underground tomb had not seen him before, they were very clear about his existence. At that moment, Noah was not surprised by Dietorius' reaction, and he smiled faintly. "Sorry, I came without informing you." "No, Lord Noah, you're too serious." There was no way to see the expression on Dietorius' skull face, but the sincerity in his voice could be heard. "The entire Nasaric underground tomb belongs to Lord Noah. Here, Lord Noah can't go anywhere, including this place." "Is that so?" Noah smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid that I'll disturb you. Aren't you making a scroll?" "It's just a scroll." "How can it be more important than greeting the Honorable Supreme?" Dietorius lowered his head. "So please don't say that, Lord Noah." "That's true, but the scroll you make will not only strengthen the Nasaric underground tomb, but it will also be of great help to me." Noah shook his head and said to Dietorius, "I'm also looking forward to the scroll you make, so you can speak with your head held high, Dietorius. It's my honor to be able to make the Honorable Supreme look forward to it." Dietorius seemed to be delighted. "I will definitely not disappoint the Supreme Sovereign's expectations." "Then I'll have to trouble you." Noah nodded and asked, "Is the production of the scroll going smoothly?" "There has been a lot of progress so far," Dietorius said respectfully. "At the very least, I can confirm that there are requirements for the parchment paper used to make scrolls with different levels of magical effects." "Oh," Noah asked curiously. "How should I put it?" "After experimenting, I can basically confirm that the parchment paper brought back from the surface can only be used to make magic scrolls of the 2nd level, Dietorius said. As for the 3rd level of magical effects, there's no way to use parchment paper to make them." "Is that so?" Noah frowned slightly. "In other words, the parchment paper in this world isn't suitable for making scrolls?" "I'm not sure yet. It could also be that my method of making scrolls is different from the method of making scrolls in this world," Dietorius said truthfully. "After all, I heard that the potions in this world are very different from the potions in the Nasaric underground tomb. In this world, under normal circumstances, there were 3 ways to make potions that were used as recovery potions. The first was a potion made from herbs. This kind of potion lacked speed and only had the effect of strengthening one's original abilities. For example, it could strengthen one's arm, recover one's stamina, or increase one's endurance. Not only was the effect not satisfactory, but there was also a big problem with the efficiency. The only advantage was that it was very cheap. The second was a potion made from a mixture of magic and herbs. The effect of this kind of potion would be faster than the first, but it still required time. Most adventurers preferred to use this kind of potion. After a battle, they would drink a bottle and slowly recover. The third type was a potion that was made using only magic. This kind of potion was made by injecting magic into an alchemy solution. The effect of the potion would be immediately apparent, and had the same effect as the magic that was injected. It was similar to magic scrolls and magic tools that could only be used on oneself. Therefore, this kind of potion was also more expensive. Compared to these three kinds of potions, the potions in the Nasaric underground tomb were different. Judging from this, the difference in the production method had a big impact on the items that were made. With my production method, no matter how many times I experiment with the parchment paper that is brought back from the outside, as long as it is used to make scrolls that exceed the 3rd level, it will immediately be scrapped, Dietorius said regretfully. However, if you use higher-level paper materials, you can make higher-level magic scrolls. If you use the highest-level paper materials, such as dragon skin, you can even make a 10th-level magic scroll without any problems. Dragon skin? Noah was deep in thought. Dragon skin was, of course, a high-level item that couldn't be any higher. After all, whether it was this world, the game, or even the other worlds, creatures like dragons were generally more powerful creatures. In this world, dragons were even known as the strongest race. The skin that could only be obtained after hunting dragons was naturally extremely precious. However, there were many dragon skins in the Nasaric underground tomb's treasure hall. It was an item that the members of Ain Zul Gong spent a lot of effort to obtain. If it took so much effort to do so in the game, it would be even more difficult to do so in this world. It is said that in this world, dragons are the most powerful creatures, and they are also very rare, Dietorius said. In a situation where we can't guarantee a way to obtain dragon skin, I think that it is better to limit the use of the precious dragon skin. Without a supply, it is undoubtedly foolish to use it continuously. Upon hearing this, Noah chuckled and said, "Don't worry. If it is dragon skin, you can use it as much as you want." Dietorius couldn't help but be stunned. "Don't worry, I have a way to ensure that the dragon skin resources will not be cut off." Noah suddenly smiled. "So, you can use it as much as you want?" "Yes," Dietorius immediately replied. Noah thought of the many resources that could be automatically replenished in the Gate of Babylon. Among them, dragon skin was included. "It seems that I can take out a lot of resources for Nasaric to use." Thinking of this, Noah looked at Yair Bade and Demiugos. "Get someone to come here and choose the summoning books and information books that need to be used, and prepare a backup. Also, arrange the item books and magic books. I want to bring them with me." "Yes." Yair Bade and Demiugos bowed their heads and accepted the order. Chapter 1240. Although he had asked Yair Bade and Demiugos to organize the summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books, it was not a task that could be completed in a short period of time. After all, the number of books in the library on the 10th floor of the underground tomb in Nasaric was simply outrageous. This library was the largest one Noah had ever seen, be it in terms of size or collection of books. Fortunately, more than 99% of the books were just simple strategies and novels. Although the remaining 1% of summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books were just as numerous, it would not take too long to organize them, even if it could not be completed in a short period of time. With the manpower that Yair Bade and Demiugos had gathered, it would probably take about 2 to 3 days. Under such circumstances, Noah directly handed the task of organizing the library to Yair Bade and Demiugos. He then stayed in the library for an entire day, reading the novels and strategies with great interest, and only left the library when it was dark. Along with Noah, Yair Bade left as well. On the way to his room, Noah sensed the aura following closely behind him. He was speechless as he turned around to look at Yair Bade. "Yair Bade, why have you been following me?" "I was thinking that Lord Noah must be very tired after a busy day today, right?" Yair Bade said with a smile that was as gentle as a goddess, but there was no smile in his eyes. "So, as your subordinate, please at least allow me to watch Lord Noah fall asleep. Otherwise, I won't be at ease." "Is that so?" Noah rubbed his eyebrows and said directly. "Then what is the truth?" His words made the gentle smile on Yair Bade's face become slightly distorted, and he became as sinister as a demon. "How can I watch Satya beat me to it?" Those were Yair Bade's heartfelt words. Yair Bade remembered them clearly. In the morning, when Noah decided to punish Satya, he asked her to go to his room at night. A man and a woman alone in a room with a punishment? Who wouldn't be worried? At the very least, Yair Bade couldn't be at ease. How can he do such an enviable thing with Satya alone? Yair Bade's body was emitting a black aura, and his smile became more and more twisted. That's not a punishment at all, but the best reward. That fellow, Satya, actually accepted it with a clear conscience. As a guardian, she's too unqualified. Seeing that Yair Bade was about to go crazy, Noah's eyes twitched. He could only sigh and look at Yair Bade with narrowed eyes. In other words, you want me to do the same to you, right? That's right. The black smoke around Yair Bade's body instantly disappeared without a trace. His face was flushed red, and he began to twist and turn in an extremely intoxicated manner. May the benevolent and merciful Supreme Sovereign bestow upon me an equal reward. No punishment. Upon hearing this, Noah stared at Yair Bade speechlessly. Under Noah's gaze, Yair Bade gradually woke up from his intoxicated state, and his pretty face suddenly became somewhat unnatural. That. May I ask what I did wrong? No, you didn't do anything wrong. Noah suddenly smiled, and it was an extremely mischievous smile. However, since it's the request of the Chief Guardian, who has worked hard and performed a great service, then I'll fulfill your wish and let you suffer the same punishment as Satya. Seeing Noah's smile for some reason, Yair Bade had an ominous premonition in his heart. However, this ominous premonition was immediately drowned out by ecstasy. Finally! Yair Bade's tears flowed out. I've finally waited for the time when the Supreme Sovereign will favor me. While saying this, Yair Bade seemed to have thought of something. He twitched the tip of his nose and sniffed his own body. Then, his expression changed, and he hurriedly said to Noah, Lord Noah, please give me some time. I'll go take a bath first. After saying this, Yair Bade slipped away with a whoosh and disappeared without a trace. What bath are you taking? Noah looked in the direction Yair Bade had left, and the corners of his mouth lifted slightly. Anyway, it's not something that can only be done after taking a bath. After saying this, Noah turned around, feeling amused. However, when he turned around, a figure with a fragrant body and a bright smile appeared in front of Noah's eyes. I'm done. Lord Noah. Isn't this a little too fast? 3 minutes later, Noah brought Yair Bade, who had taken a quick bath and was in an extremely good mood, to the door of his room. Yair Bade's face was full of anticipation, and his eyes were surging with desire as he thought about what would happen next. Inside, Satya was holding a mirror and constantly looking at herself. Her pretty face was full of blush, and she looked like a young girl in love. In response, Noah inwardly chuckled and walked over. As soon as she heard footsteps, Satya immediately stopped what she was doing and looked over with anticipation and joy. When she saw Noah's figure, Shesha's tender and cute face was filled with heartfelt joy. However, when Satya saw Yair Bade behind Noah, the blush and joy on her face froze and became dangerous. Why are you here? He didn't even need to think to know who he was talking to. Facing Shesha's dangerous expression, Yair Bade looked at her with a provocative gaze and spoke with a victorious expression. Lord Noah has decided to give me the same reward. No punishment. So Satya, I'm here to be punished with you. Together. Shesha's expression became even more dangerous, and she looked at Yair Bade with murderous eyes. You hateful slut, how dare you ruin my plans? What? Don't tell me you don't want to be together? Yair Bade looked down at Satya condescendingly and said. In that case, you can ask Lord Noah to waive your punishment. I can bear it alone. How is that possible? Satya yelled with a fierce expression. Fine, let's do it together. It's better than letting you beat me to it. Don't think that we'll be tied if we do it together. Yair Bade also revealed a sinister expression. I'll definitely make Lord Noah punish me first. Humph. Satya snorted in disdain. Let's wait and see. As a result, the two guardians of the underground tomb glared at each other, and there were even sparks in their gazes. Little did they know that looking at Yair Bade and Satya, the smile on Noah's face was also very bright. It was a smile that looked like a prank that was about to succeed. When Yair Bade and Satya entered the room under Noah's lead and arrived in the hall, the two girls saw it at the same time. There was a crystal ball on the table in the hall. It was something that wasn't originally in this room. Lord Noah? Yair Bade asked in puzzlement. What's this? Are you talking about this crystal ball? Noah stepped forward and patted the huge crystal ball. This is your next punishment. Our next punishment. Yerbade and Shatia were stunned on the spot. Seeing this, Noah shrugged and slowly stroked the crystal ball. The next moment, the crystal ball suddenly lit up and a scene appeared. It was a scene of many densely packed black dots crawling on the ground. This is, Shatia said with some uncertainty. Ants. Yes. The densely packed black dots crawling on the ground were all ants. Both of you listen carefully, Noah suddenly said. Next, you will stay here and count ants. Count ants? Yerbade and Shatia were completely stunned. That's right, and you have to count until dawn, Noah said with a faint smile. Tomorrow, I will ask you how many ants are crawling on the crystal ball. If you answer correctly, your punishment will be over. If you answer incorrectly, you will continue counting the next night. If you keep answering incorrectly, you will continue counting. This is your punishment. Yerbade and Shesha's vision turned black at the same time and they fell to the ground. Chapter 1241. The next day, when Noah woke up from his sleep, the familiar soft touch and body temperature in front of him awakened the rest of his muddled consciousness. Opening his eyes, Noah felt the light weight in front of him as he reached out and slowly lifted the blanket. In the next moment, a cute elf girl appeared in Noah's field of vision. Huff. Huff. The girl seemed to still be in a deep sleep. Her extremely subtle breathing sound faintly rose and fell in the silent space, making the air seem to carry a slight fragrance. The silver-white long hair was extremely soft as it hung down her slender and white back, covering the elf girl's entire back. The elf girl was completely naked, only wearing a pair of black knee socks. She hugged Noah's neck as usual, snuggling into Noah's embrace, directly pressing down on Noah's body as she slept sweetly. Who else could it be other than Aster? This familiar scene made Noah's expression involuntarily relax. Gently stroking Aster's soft silver-white hair and looking at the elf girl's naked body in his arms, Noah didn't have any evil thoughts in his heart, only warmth. Under normal circumstances, as long as there was no one beside Noah, then the next morning, Noah would find Aster in the same state, sleeping in his arms. It wasn't that Noah hadn't tried to wake up in the middle of the night. However, Aster didn't appear in this state in the middle of the night. Thus, Noah judged that Aster should only wake up in the morning, turn into her human form, lie in his arms, and continue to sleep. Then, after dawn, if Aster woke up earlier than Noah, then this elf girl would use all kinds of methods that would excite a healthy male to wake Noah up. If Noah had woken up earlier than Aster, he would have seen this young lady who looked more like an animal than an elf appear in this form. Thus, Noah lovingly kissed the tip of Aster's nose, then quietly got up and quietly got off the bed without waking Aster up. Covering Aster with the blanket, Noah smoothed the bangs in front of the sleeping Aster's forehead, then straightened up and began to wash up. Walking out of the bedroom, the hall appeared in front of Noah's eyes. Noah gently closed the bedroom door and cast his gaze into the hall. There, Yerbade and Zaisha were sitting side by side at the table in the hall. On the table, a large crystal ball was still playing the scene of a group of densely packed ants crawling across the ground. Yerbade and Zaisha stared at this scene, as if they were broken puppets, muttering in a daze. 1376854813. 1376854814. 1376854815. It was clear that the two girls were still counting the ants. Looking at Yerbade and Zaisha shaking their heads and muttering absent-mindedly like broken puppets, Noah felt a little guilty. Poor Yerbade and Zaisha were full of expectations that Noah would favor them, but in the end, they were met with a cruel punishment. The feeling of falling from heaven to hell must be very uncomfortable, right? Moreover, the two girls' punishment was to count ants for a night. The densely packed ants crawling across the surface of the crystal ball at a rather fast speed. Not to mention counting for a night. Even counting for a minute would make one feel dizzy and faint, right? However, it was precisely because of this that it could be considered a punishment. If he really punished Zaisha severely, then Noah wouldn't be able to bear it. But if the punishment was too light, then it wouldn't be able to eliminate the guilt in Zaisha's heart. In that case, how could he make Zaisha feel afraid and punished without causing any substantial damage? This was the method that Noah thought of. Presumably, even Zaisha would go crazy from counting ants for a night, right? Moreover, Zacia's patience wasn't very good to begin with, so it would be even more effective as a punishment. As for Yair Bade, it would be an undeserved calamity. Well, as demons and vampires, Yair Bade and Zacia were creatures that did not need to sleep or eat, and they were races that did not tire. It was not a bad thing to have some fun. Of course, even if the two girls counted wrongly, Noah did not intend to let them continue. If they really had to count like this every night, then even demons and vampires would probably go crazy. Thus, Noah approached the two girls with a faint smile on his face. Okay, Yair Bade, Zacia, you can stop now. After Noah's voice sounded, the two girls looked up as if they had just woken up from a dream. They looked at Noah blankly with a melancholy expression. Seeing how Yair Bade and Zacia were staring at him blankly, the faint smile on Noah's face began to slowly disappear and was replaced by a trace of worry. Don't tell me that Yair Bade and Zacia have really gone crazy from counting ants for an entire night? Just as Noah was worried about this, Yair Bade suddenly lowered his head slowly, letting the bangs in front of his forehead cover his expression, and his body trembled slightly. That appearance made Noah feel a little scared. Yeah, Yair Bade? Noah asked with some trepidation. What's wrong with you? At this moment, Yair Bade suddenly moved. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound, a force exploded in Noah's arms, making Noah lose his balance. Noah only felt his vision spinning, and then there was another impact on his back. The scene on the ceiling was fixed in Noah's vision. In other words, Noah was now lying on the ground. Moreover, he was knocked down by an abnormally soft object. As for what that abnormally soft object was, there was no need to guess. Sir Noah, Yair Bade, who was riding on Noah and pressing Noah down, raised his upper body and met Noah's gaze. At this moment, Noah discovered that Yair Bade's beautiful gem-like pupils were slightly enlarged, like a snake eyeing its prey. This made Noah shiver all over. Yair Bade. Noah's voice couldn't help but raise a little due to panic. What are you doing? In the face of Noah's questioning, who had lost his calm and had fallen into a state of panic, Yair Bade acted as if he didn't hear anything. It was as if he was completely immersed in his own world and couldn't hear anything from the outside world. I can't hold it in anymore, Yair Bade said drunkenly, as if he was drunk. I keep telling myself, I have to hold on. I have to hold on. As long as I hold on, until I finish counting the ants, then I will be able to obtain Sir Noah's favor. Now. Finally, this moment has come. Right. Cold. Calm down, Yair Bade. Noah could only struggle to get up. Get off of me first. However, no matter how much Noah struggled, there was no way for him to break free from Yair Bade's restraints. My level has already reached LV 4, and my all ability is at the SSS stage. In terms of physical ability, I am stronger than Hercules, who descended in the form of a servant, but there is no way for me to push Yair Bade away. In fact, Noah couldn't push Yair Bade away. Firstly, it was because Yair Bade was a max-level warrior character with extremely high physical attributes. Secondly, it was because the place he touched was too soft, so Noah couldn't use his full strength. In such a situation, Yair Bade murmured in a daze. It's all Sir Noah's fault. Undoubtedly, I'm looking forward to it. But I can't get what I want. That's right. It's all Sir Noah's fault. The corners of Noah's mouth began to twitch. It was at this time that Siataya made her move. That's right. It's all Lord Noah's fault. Zacia stood up shakily and suddenly raised her head. Like a predator, she bared her fangs and brandished her claws as she pounced towards Noah. It's all Sir Noah's fault. Noah was directly pounced on. Together with the two girls, he rolled on the ground in a sorry state. That's enough. Noah couldn't stand it anymore and roared. Chapter 1242. Noah's Gate of Babylon was a treasure trove jointly built by Gaia and Aleia, the two suppressive forces. Even the hero King Gilgamesh, who claimed to have all the treasures of an era, could only stare at the treasures inside. Noah's Gate of Babylon had all kinds of rare resources such as fine steel, dragon skin, and so on. In addition, Noah's Gate of Babylon had the ability to automatically replenish consumables. There were many resources that were extremely precious in the eyes of others, but they were inexhaustible and inexhaustible. For the development of the underground tomb in Nasariq, Noah asked Yair and Demiugos to sort out all the summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books in the library to enrich the Gate of Babylon. At the same time, he also took out many of the precious resources in the Gate of Babylon and provided them to the underground tomb in Nasaric for use. With these precious resources, the production of all kinds of items in the underground tomb in Nasaric would definitely be fruitful. As for the summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books that Yair and Demiugos sorted out, they were all put into Noah's Gate of Babylon. Yair and Demiugos took the copies of the summoning books and information books with them. They also took a large amount of gold coins from Noah and prepared to summon high-level monsters. They also started to let the NPCs in the crafting department use the information books to create all kinds of equipment, items. As for the summoning books, considering that the space in the underground tomb in Nasaric was limited, Yair and Demiugos still needed to discuss how to use them. Otherwise, if they only carried out the summoning, the sudden increase in the population of the underground tomb in Nasaric would definitely cause these monsters to become a burden. Therefore, what kind of monsters to summon, 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 what kind of requirements there were in terms of race, profession, skills and magic etc., were all things that needed to be discussed. Noah handed all of this over to Yair and Demiugos. It wasn't that Noah wanted to be a hands-off manager. It was just that Yair and Demiugos were definitely more familiar with the situation in the Great Graveyard in Nasaric than Noah. Moreover, he was much more familiar with it. Since that was the case, rather than getting involved, it was better to let Yair and Demiugos take full responsibility to prevent them from ruining things. Noah did not want to give orders carelessly due to insufficient information and cause something like Shadia to happen again. Therefore, it was better to leave everything here to Yair and Demiugos. As for Noah himself, he would occasionally listen to the reports from Yair and Demiugos, and learn about the operation of each floor of the Great Tomb of Nasaric from the other guardians. When he was free, he would check on the management system in the throne room. His days were quite fulfilling. On this day, Noah was browsing through the management system in the throne room. Through the management system's display of the operation of the Great Tomb of Nasaric, Noah could easily see that the number of monsters in the entire stronghold was increasing. In addition, various facilities responsible for producing equipment, items were also operating in full swing. Presumably, every once in a while, these facilities would produce a batch of equipment, items to fill the inventory of the Great Tomb of Nasaric, right? It's going well, Noah said as he flipped through the main window that appeared in front of him. If it continues to develop at such a high speed, can the supply of resources be maintained? The problem with gold coins was no longer a problem after confirming that no matter what kind of gold coin it was, as long as it contained gold, it could be used. However, producing equipment, items not only required gold coins, but also various materials. Although Noah's treasure trove had almost everything, it was only relative to the shaped moon world. In this world and the game world, there were many things that were not in Noah's treasure trove. Otherwise, Noah would not be tempted by the items in the treasure hall and library of the Great Tomb of Nasaric. The resources in the treasure trove are not lacking, but the resources that are not in the treasure trove are limited. Noah said thoughtfully. Should I slightly control the projects that consume limited resources? Just as Noah was thinking about this problem, outside the door in front of him, a figure slowly walked in. It was Annabelle. Aware of Annabelle's arrival, Noah raised his head slightly and looked over. At the same time, Annabelle said such a sentence to Noah with a rather serious expression. "Son Noah, there is an intruder." Noah's eyebrows suddenly raised. On the ground quite far away from the Great Tomb of Nasaric where the throne hall was located, outside the Great Tomb of Nasaric that presented the scene of a tomb, two uninvited guests were welcomed. "Wow! I didn't expect there to really be a tomb here. You scared me." At the entrance, Clementine pointed at the tomb in front of her with a frivolous and exaggerated attitude and said with a laugh, "There is actually a tomb in the middle of this grassland. Isn't this too strange?" Right. Humph. Looking at the extremely pretentious Clementine, Cadget snorted coldly, but also showed a somewhat excited smile. "I didn't expect there to be such a harvest. This is really unexpected." Clementine and Cadget came here only to find the magic chanter who scared away Yelantil's adventurers and had the ability to summon extremely powerful undeads. Because Cadget often dealt with undeads, he had a certain ability to track down the unique negative energy of undeads. When he planned to track down the powerful undeads that were summoned, he unexpectedly discovered this tomb. Clementine grinned, but her eyes cast a sharp gaze like that of a ferocious beast, sweeping the interior of the tomb. Clementine could clearly see. In the tomb, the grass had been carefully cut, and she could see at a glance that someone was carrying out regular maintenance. Needless to say, there must be people who come here often. Clementine looked at the ancestral hall in the center of the tomb and showed a ferocious smile like that of a predator. There might even be people who are like little Kadget, living directly with those dead fellows. Who knows? I just don't know if that person is the one we are looking for. Kadget sneered again and again. The only thing we can be sure of is that there is very powerful negative energy in this tomb, and there is definitely very powerful undeads inside. It was precisely because of this that Kadget felt both excited and nervous. He was excited because since there was a very powerful undeads here, it meant that there was a large number of low-level undeads, which could allow the powerful undeads to be born. The existence of a large number of undeads meant a large amount of negative energy. Kadget's goal was precisely this negative energy. However, facing such an undead's army that had a powerful undeads as their commander, could the two of them win? This was what made Kadget nervous. What? Clementine said in a light tone. Little Kadget, are you scared? What about you? Kadget looked at Clementine speechlessly. Aren't you scared? Scared. Clementine seemed to be amused, laughing loudly in a way that was completely unlike a young girl. That laughter was extremely sharp, so sharp that it was even a little disgusting. With such a loud laugh, Clementine held her abdomen, and her voice carried a hair-raising cruelty. Although I don't know what is inside, but I have already surpassed mortals and reached the hero domain, so I definitely can't lose. However, just as such a sentence fell from Clementine's mouth, a mocking voice suddenly sounded, and very clearly drilled into Clementine and Kadget's ears. Hero domain? That's really amazing, isn't it? I'm a little scared. Chapter 1243. The voice that suddenly echoed in the entire space came so abruptly. The cruel smile on Clementine's face suddenly froze on her face, and Kadget's expression also changed abruptly, making the entire atmosphere tense. The first to calm down was Clementine. While Kadget's expression was still changing wildly, Clementine restrained her expression, raised her head, and cast her sharp gaze like that of a carnivorous beast towards the cemetery in front of her. She saw that in the cemetery, a figure was slowly walking out from the path in front of the centermost large ancestral hall. Although I really want to ask how you found this place. Saying this, Noah walked out of the cemetery while watching Clementine and Kadget, and his eyes gradually narrowed. But, if you think about it carefully, I didn't purposely get people to hide the large underground tomb in Nasarick, so it's natural that it would be found, right? That being said, Clementine and Kadget obviously didn't come to the large underground tomb in Nasarick by chance. Whether it was Clementine or Kadget, although they were surprised by Noah's appearance, they weren't surprised. Clearly, these two uninvited guests had come prepared. Or rather, Clementine and Kadget came for Noah. Oh, is there really someone here? Clementine's somewhat unsightly smile hung on her face again, but her gaze was always sizing up Noah. Hey, don't tell me you're the one who scared the hell out of those adventurers in Yelantir? What? Is that your friend? Noah stopped and looked at Clementine from a distance as he spoke lightly. You don't look like you're here to avenge someone. That kind of thing, no matter what. Clementine tilted her neck and grinned like a broken doll. I just want to confirm if you're interesting, that's enough. Is that so? Noah muttered to himself for a while, then looked at Kadget as if he was no longer interested in Clementine. Then, what are you here for? I heard you're a magic chanter who can summon extremely powerful undead. Kadget gripped the black staff in his hand tightly and stared at Noah. Why don't you let me see how your summoning magic is? Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows and finally smiled. In other words, if you're not here to pick a fight, then you're here to challenge me, right? Pick a fight? Challenge me? Clementine was startled at first, then burst out laughing. Good. That's a good way of putting it. I like that way of putting it. In the next second, Clementine's laughter came to an abrupt halt. A killing intent that was as sharp as a blade that made one's skin hurt suddenly erupted from her body. That's right. I'm here to pick a fight. As soon as she finished speaking, Clementine stomped her feet on the ground and shot forward. In the meantime, in Clementine's hand, a short awl suddenly flashed and was held in her hand. As she waved it, it tore the air apart. With a sharp sound of wind breaking, Clementine flashed in front of Noah with a sneer. That speed was as fast as the wind. Shio dash! In the next moment, the sharp short awl was stabbed out by Clementine. The target was Noah's eyes. Ding dash! A crisp sound of collision shook the air slightly. It was the sound of a finger blocking the short awl that was piercing towards him like a bullet with the tip of his finger. I see. Ignoring Clementine's surprised expression, Noah said understandingly. In other words, I don't have to show you mercy, right? As soon as he finished speaking. Bang dash! A burst of violent magic rose from Noah's body and turned into a substantial shockwave that suddenly shook and surged out. Dong dash! In a low muffled sound, Clementine was directly sent flying by the substantial shockwave of magic. Her feet brushed against the ground and she was forced to retreat a distance of more than 10 meters before she could stabilize herself. Tisk! Clementine held her chest that hurt from the shockwave and made a speechless sound. That bastard, not only is he a magic chanter, but he's also a monk? Although Clementine's short awl did not have high lethality, it could not be more fragile than a human body. To be able to use a finger to block the sharp short awl, there was no other possibility other than a monk who could train his body to the strength of various metals. No, maybe that guy activated some defensive magic when I didn't know, or maybe it was the power of some magic tool. Clementine overturned her previous guess. How can a magic chanter who has the ability to summon a powerful immortal also be a monk at the same time? Noah raised his eyes slightly in response to Clementine's self-muttering guess. He looked at her and said with a faint smile on his face, "Is that so?" After saying that, Noah's body suddenly shook, and his figure disappeared on the spot. Clementine's eyes shrunk, and without hesitation, she stomped on the ground and retreated. However, just as Clementine's figure retreated, a ghostly figure suddenly appeared behind her and reached out a hand and put it on Clementine's back. Feeling the touch of the hand on her back, Clementine's face finally changed. Then, a voice entered Clementine's ears. "Are you a magic chanter? Or a monk? Why don't you guess again? A big shot who has stepped into the realm of heroes." At this moment, Clementine felt like there was a knife on her neck, and an extremely strong sense of crisis rose in her heart. It was only then that Clementine understood. Whether it was a magic chanter or a monk. As long as Noah slightly moved the hand on Clementine's back, Clementine's end was obvious. Without any hesitation, Clementine almost subconsciously turned around and fiercely thrust out the short awl in her hand. However, at the same time, a fist mixed with a terrifying wind carried a chilling momentum and directly smashed in Clementine's direction. At this moment, the sense of crisis in Clementine's heart surged to the peak. Clementine's battle instincts, cultivated from years of desperately struggling between life and death, told her. If she received this punch, she would be seriously injured even if she didn't die. Clementine, who had completely lost her composure, suddenly screamed. Unyielding stronghold. At this critical moment, Clementine used a skill that was like a warrior's trump card, a martial technique. A superb martial technique that could allow the user's defense to rise to the level of a city wall in an instant, unyielding stronghold. Therefore, in the next moment, the fist carrying a terrifying wind collided with a short awl that suddenly flashed with the light of a martial technique. Bang! In the sound of something exploding, the short awl collided with the fist carrying a terrifying wind. The short awl, whose defense was raised to the level of a city wall in an instant, was actually directly blasted apart by the frightening strength of the fist. Crack! The terrifying fist's undiminished momentum caused Clementine's wrist, which was holding the short awl, to produce a cracking sound, instantly bending into an angle that made one's teeth ache. Before Clementine could scream, a leg turned into a black shadow, wildly lashing out like a long whip, and lashing Clementine's side waist. Bang! In the sound of a muffled blow, Clementine violently spat out a mouthful of blood, and her figure flew out, heavily smashing into a tombstone. The tombstone was smashed into pieces of gravel, directly burying Clementine. At this moment, Noah seemed to flash out of thin air, glancing at the pile of gravel that buried Clementine's figure, then turned around and looked at the shocked Kadget. "So, it's your turn next?" Hearing this, Kadget couldn't help but take a step back, and roared with fear on his face. "You! Who are you? Only now do you remember to ask for someone else's name?" Noah laughed out loud. "But that's not important anymore. I just need to know that you came with ill intentions, and that's enough." Chapter 1244. The cool breeze, mixed with the smell of soil, blew through the surface graveyard of Nazarik's underground graveyard, causing the tense atmosphere in the air to suddenly become heavy. Looking at Noah, who was standing against the wind with his robe fluttering in the breeze, Kadget's expression became extremely ugly. However, compared to his ugly expression, Kadget's heart was more terrified of Noah. "How is this possible?" Kadget murmured in disbelief. "How can there be a guy who can defeat that woman so easily?" Kadget did not have a good impression of Clementine. There was no other reason other than that Clementine was a person with a personality defect. In the Celian theocracy, there were a total of 6 special intelligence units, and the unit called the Dark Scripture was the most special one. It was not like the Sunshine Scripture, which had hundreds of people, and there were only a few dozen of them. However, the Dark Scripture, formed by these dozen of people, was the trump card of the entire Celian theocracy. There was only one condition to be able to join the Dark Scripture. That was to at least reach the level of a hero. In other words, in the Dark Scripture, every member had to be at least level 29, and their strength was comparable to the highest level of a fine steel adventurer. Clementine came from such a unit where everyone was at the level of a hero. However, Clementine betrayed the Dark Scripture. The reason was that Clementine wanted to snatch a magical tool that was not of much use to her on a whim. Since then, Clementine betrayed the Dark Scripture, revealing her ferocious and cruel side. This woman loved to torture people. Moreover, no matter if it was an enemy or an innocent passerby, as long as Clementine had that thought, she would not hesitate to use the cruelest methods to torture people. Kadget was not a good person. Otherwise, he would not have wanted to turn the entire Yelantir into a dead city for his own purpose, to collect negative energy. However, it was impossible for Kadget to have a good impression of such a person with a personality defect. However, he had to admit that at least in terms of strength, Clementine was indeed quite strong. Kadget believed that even if Gu Jefu was the strongest warrior in the kingdom, Clementine would still be able to fight him to a draw. How could such a person be defeated in 2 or 3 moves by this man of unknown origin? What kind of joke was this? "What? Aren't you coming over?" Seeing Kadget's ugly face, Noah sneered. "You're the ones who came looking for trouble, and I've personally come out to accept the challenge. Why don't you show some promise?" Don't underestimate me." Kadget's heart was filled with anger as he whispered in a hoarse voice. "Even if you can defeat that person with a personality defect, as a magic chanter, you will never be able to defeat me." With these words, Kadget raised the hand that wasn't holding the black staff. In that hand, there was a pitch-black bead, so black that it was beginning to turn purple. Clementine had once said that the summoning magic that Kadget could use was of a lower level, but it could be amplified through precious magical tools and unleash great power. That magic tool was the bead in Kadget's hand. "Just watch. The power of my orb of death." Kadget roared loudly. "Come out for me, Bone Dragon." As his voice fell, a dazzling light suddenly flickered on the pitch-black orb. Following the activation of the magic tool called the Orb of Death, the entire ground began to tremble. Noah's eyebrows slightly wrinkled. With his outstanding sensing ability, Noah could clearly feel it. Underground, there were 2 more auras. Gotcha? Immediately after, the ground in front of Kadget cracked and slowly protruded. Pung dash! The protruding ground suddenly exploded, revealing 2 gargantuan figures. They were 2 colossal creatures that were more than 3 meters tall and formed from countless human bones, with long necks and bones forming wings. Impressively, they were bone dragons. Roar dash! The 2 bone dragons' eye sockets flashed with ominous glints as they faced Noah's direction and let out a roar that shook the atmosphere. Ha 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 ha! Just watch. This is the power of the Orb of Death. The appearance of the bone dragon seemed to have restored Kadget's confidence, and he let out an unpleasant laugh. The bone dragons have an absolute resistance to magic. No matter what kind of magic chanter you are, they are invincible natural enemies. Even if you defeat that person with a flawed personality, as a magic chanter, You definitely can't win against two bone dragons. Kadget, who was laughing like this, didn't notice. Noah, who stood against the wind amidst the sound waves emitted by the two bone dragons, had traces of interest and ridicule in his eyes. The interest was towards the orb of death in Kadget's hands. Although he didn't know what kind of magic tool it was, there wasn't such an item in the large underground tomb of Nassarik, which made Noah quite interested. As for the ridicule, it was directed towards Kadget. In the battle with Clementine just now, Noah didn't even use a single spell. The whole battle was mainly close combat. In the end, Kadget still thought that Noah was a magic chanter. He was really stupid beyond belief. At that moment, Noah sighed expressionlessly and raised a hand. Two golden ripples, like water waves, suddenly fluctuated in the space on both sides of Noah's body. Two long spears popped out, like arrows knocked on a bowstring, and suddenly aimed at the two huge bone dragons. Kadget only saw two golden lights suddenly flash in front of his eyes. That was the scene of the two long spears explosively shooting out, flying towards the two bone dragons like meteors. Immediately after, the two long spears, which were extremely small compared to the bone dragons, fell on the bone dragons like beams of light. Pang! The sound of the collision neatly overlapping each other resounded. The two bone dragons were directly blown apart by the two long spears, turning into bones that filled the sky, sprinkling down from midair. WH? Kadget was aghast. Noah ignored the horrified Kadget and cast his gaze on the orb in his hand. You seem to be holding something interesting. Then take it as my reward for accompanying you for so long. Noah lifted his feet and walked in the direction of Kadget. Kadget's face was filled with fear as he staggered backwards. Pang! At this moment, a muffled explosion resounded. Only to see that the pile of stones formed by the smashed tombstone suddenly burst open, and a figure scuttled out from within. Gale Break. This was a martial skill that could increase speed. Flowing water acceleration. This was a martial skill that could accelerate the nerves, make movements break through the limits of the body, and increase attack speed and movement speed at the same time. Super evasion. This was a martial skill that could increase agility. Ability enhancement. This was a martial skill that could increase physical ability. Ability enhancement. This was a martial skill that could increase physical ability by a large margin. Generally speaking, a warrior could only use one type of martial skill at the same time. A few people could use two types at the same time, and only those who were truly strong could use 3 or 4 types at the same time. Even a fine steel adventurer could only use about 5 types of martial skills at the same time. At this moment, one hand was twisted into an impossible angle. Clementine, whose mouth was still full of blood, used 5 types of martial skills at the same time. With a ferocious expression like a ghost, she violently shot towards Noah's direction. Die for me! In the sharp roar, Clementine, who used 5 types of martial skills to strengthen her body at the same time, flew behind Noah with unprecedented speed. The short awl in her hand was like an arrow that pierced through the sky. In the ear-piercing sound of the air breaking, she violently stabbed towards Noah's back. Once she made a move, it was a fatal blow. Ding! Unfortunately, in the crisp sound of the collision, that violent short awl was blocked by a finger. Just like at the beginning. It's not over yet. Clementine roared out, and fiercely clenched the short awl in her hand. Pang! In the next moment, the short awl suddenly burst into a burst of flames, covering Noah's entire body. Chapter 1245. Pung Dash. Bright flames rose up in the cemetery, turning the fiery red flames into monstrous heat waves that completely covered Noah's body. The scalding flames burned in the center of the cemetery, causing the surrounding temperature to suddenly rise, causing the atmosphere to become scalding hot. Ha 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 dash. Clementine, whose hand was twisted to an impossible angle and whose mouth was still bleeding, laughed like a maniac. Go to hell! You bastard! While laughing like this, Clementine continued to turn the short awl in her hand with a ferocious expression. Peng peng pinch peng pen dash. Suddenly, in a series of continuous explosions, waves of shocking flames exploded from the short awl in Clementine's hand, causing the thick flames to carry a scalding heat wave and expand in the surroundings. Seeing this scene, Kadget, who was retreating in a sorry state due to his fear of Noah, couldn't help but be overjoyed. Clementine's weapon had an additional spell that could accumulate magic. This additional spell could accumulate all kinds of magic and store all of these magic in the weapon, allowing Clementine's short all to have the ability to use all kinds of magic. It could be considered a rather special magic tool. However, the magic accumulated in the weapon was the same as other consumable magic tools. Each time it was used, it would be used up, unless new magic was injected and accumulated. Now, Clementine had released the third-rank spell accumulated in the short all, Fireball, all at once. Being bombarded by so many third-rank spells at close range, Kadget didn't believe that anyone could survive unscathed. Unfortunately, the joy on Kadget's face quickly froze as he thought this. Because, in the center of the surging flames, a black shadow quietly appeared. Swish dash! A hand suddenly reached out from the magma-like flames at an extremely shocking speed. Clementine, who was immersed in the pleasure of using violence, didn't even have time to react before her neck was directly grabbed by the hand that suddenly reached out from the flames in front of her. Then, that hand was like a pair of pliers, slowly tightening. Goo-woo dash! Clementine's maniacal laughter from a second ago was immediately replaced by a suffocating sound of anguish. Her hands almost subconsciously tightened around the hand that was strangling her neck, and her beast-like face began to turn red. It was only at this moment that another hand reached out from the scorching flames. As if dispelling the smoke, it suddenly waved. Pung dash! Accompanied by a muffled explosion, the flames that carried an astonishing amount of heat were directly scattered, turning into sparks that filled the sky and gradually disappeared. You seem to like violence? Noah, who was completely unscathed, held Clementine tightly. He looked at Clementine, whose face was starting to turn red. His eyes flashed with a cold light as he looked at Clementine, who was being held in the air by him. Clementine's beautiful face was faintly red. I wonder if someone like you would also like to be treated with the same kind of violence by others? As he spoke, Noah continued to tighten his grip, causing Clementine to repeatedly let out pained cries. Her eyes began to roll back, and her feet that were suspended in the air kept kicking, like a struggling frog. It was an unbearable sight. Watching the scene of Clementine, who had reached the hero domain, struggling like a powerless child in Noah's hands, Kadget only felt that all the strength in his body was dissipating. His body went limp, and he sat on the ground. Kadget didn't even have the strength to hold the black staff, and let it fall to the ground. He used the rest of his strength to hold the Pearl of Death. His hands trembled, and he looked at Noah with eyes full of fear. Monster. Monster. At this time, only boundless fear and regret emerged in Kadget's heart. Fear was naturally fear of Noah. Regret was that he shouldn't have been convinced by Clementine, who had a personality flaw, to come here and face this monster in front of him. Warriors who had reached the hero domain were completely vulnerable in his hands. The bone dragon that had absolute magic resistance and could completely nullify magic below the 7th rank, and there were even 2 of them. In his hands, they also couldn't survive a single move. What was this kind of existence if not a monster? At least, it was impossible for there to be such an existence among humans. Kadget was completely overwhelmed by fear, and he hysterically roared at Noah. How? How can a human be so strong to this extent? How can he be so strong that even one of the special intelligence units of the Celian theocracy, the dark scripture, that only those who have reached the hero domain can join, can't fight back? As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere in the air suddenly changed. Noah slowly tightened his grip. He didn't have the slightest intention of showing mercy as he planned to choke Clementine to death. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Kadget. You said, one of the special intelligence units of the Celian theocracy? Kadget, who was stared at by Noah's deep dark eyes, froze there and couldn't speak anymore. Ignoring Kadget, Noah turned his head again and stared at Clementine. You are one of the special intelligence units of the Celian theocracy? The person from the dark scripture? Clementine couldn't speak at all. She could only kick her legs that were suspended in the air and let out muffled cries. Under this kind of situation, Clementine's breathing gradually became weak, and the strength of her struggling also began to slow down bit by bit. If this continued, it would only take less than 5 seconds for a powerhouse who had reached the limit of a human to be reduced to suffocating to death. At this time, Noah let go of his hand. Clementine, who fell due to gravity, directly fell to the ground. Like a drowning person, she covered her throat and coughed while lying on the ground, gasping for air to absorb the oxygen that her lungs lacked. You! Clementine raised her head with difficulty. Her pair of bloodshot eyes stared straight at Noah, her face like a ghost. You bastard. So you still have the strength to curse? Noah looked down at Clementine from above, his face completely cold. Very good. It's good that you can speak. I still have a lot of things to ask you. I hope you still have the strength to speak. Clementine's face twisted. It was because of anger but also because of fear. Driven by the two emotions, Clementine squeezed out a voice with a ferocious expression. What exactly do you plan to do? What do I plan to do? Noah laughed coldly. There are a lot of things I plan to do, such as answering the question of why the people from the dark scripture came here. But there's plenty of time for that. In short, I hope you can tell me the location of the capital of the Sealian theocracy. That will save me the trouble of having Demiurgos investigate. Noah didn't give Clementine a chance to reply. He pinched Clementine's face and curled his lips into an arc that sent chills down her spine. Of course, I don't need you to cooperate. There are plenty of ways to get information from you in Nazarik's underground tomb. Don't you like violence? Now, be prepared to endure all the violence you'll inflict in your life. After saying this, Noah pushed away Clementine's face without showing any mercy. Clementine fell heavily to the ground and let out a pained cry. Ah! On the other side, Kadjit finally collapsed under the attack of fear. Kadjit didn't even want the pearl of death in his hand. He directly threw away the magic tool that he regarded as his life. He scrambled to his feet and staggered in the opposite direction of Noah. Now, Kadjit only had one thought. That was to leave this place as soon as possible. This wish was extinguished. Poochie! A tearing sound resounded. Kadjit's sorry figure and mournful scream simultaneously stopped in the air. Sharp blades pierced through Kadjit's body from all directions. And those sharp blades were the arms of monsters. Chapter 1246. Drip. Nearly a dozen sharp blades pierced through Kadjit's thin body. While keeping Kadjit in place, the crimson blood on the tip of the blades dripped to the ground, gradually forming a pool of blood. Kadjit first slowly lowered his head, looking at the sharp blades that pierced through his body one after another, the blades covered in his own blood. He then raised his head with difficulty, looking at his surroundings. It wasn't until this time that Kadjit was able to clearly see what kind of monster had pierced his body with a blade. They were monsters that were about the same size as humans, and looked like black spiders in ninja attire. Since they were monsters that looked like black spiders, then these monsters naturally had 8 legs. As for those 8 legs, they were all sharp blades. In other words, the sharp blades that pierced through Kadjit's body were the legs of these black spider-like monsters. Looking at these monsters, Kadjit slowly opened his mouth. While blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, he spat out words with difficulty. Why, Kadjit's question, if heard by others, might not be able to understand anything. However, everyone present clearly understood what Kadjit's question was. That was, where did these monsters come from, and when did they appear? Undoubtedly, until a second ago, there were no other creatures around except for Noah, Clementine, and Kadjit, right? However, this question was a bit boring. Magic that can make you invisible shouldn't be rare, right? Noah said faintly. Although these monsters don't rely on magic, but a special skill to make them invisible, they have indeed been around since the beginning, and have been guarding this place. If I hadn't appeared, the moment you stepped into the tomb, they would have directly strangled you. This was also the reason why Noah personally appeared here. Previously, Noah had ordered Demiurgos to collect information on the Sealian cult. But because the cost of maintaining the great necropolis in Nasarik had been solved, Noah asked Demiurgos to focus on the development of the great necropolis in Nasarik. Otherwise, he would have gotten the information on the Sealian cult long ago. After all, Noah only needed information on the location of the capital of the Sealian cult. The location of the capital of a neighboring country. He only needed to go to Yelantir and spend some effort to ask, and he would be able to get it easily. The reason why he didn't do that was because the tomb in Nasarik was more important. After knowing that there were intruders, Noah decided to come to the surface personally to see if he could collect any useful information, and not let the monsters guarding the tomb directly strangle the source of information. He didn't expect that this time, he would meet one of the special intelligence units of the Celian cult, and it was a member of the Dark Scripture. It was the most suitable. When you decided to invade this place, was it? Noah looked at Kadjit, stared and closed his eyes. Thus, you can hold on to your regret and die here. Kadjit's eyes widened a little, and then his pupils began to dilate. His head drooped down, and he completely stopped moving. The monsters that pierced through Kadjit's body pulled out their blades one after another, bringing along a burst of red blood. They let Kadjit fall to the ground, and the ground was gradually dyed red. Deal with the corpse. Noah glanced at Kadjit's corpse, and then shifted his gaze to Clementine. Also, bring this woman back. The surrounding monsters immediately bowed their heads respectfully, received the order, and went forward to detain Clementine. Realizing that she had really provoked a powerful opponent, and also understood the cruel fate that she would have to bear next, Clementine hysterically resisted and struggled, but she was completely unable to free herself from the hands of any of the monsters around her. No matter what, Clementine was at most a character who had reached level 35 at most. On the other hand, the monsters on the surface of Nazarik's graveyard were at least level 50. Under these circumstances, it was impossible for Clementine to escape from the hands of the monsters that were detaining her. Thus, under Clementine's sharp screams, this person with a personality defect was escorted by the surrounding monsters into the large ancestral hall in the center of the tomb, and into the large tomb of Nasarik. What awaited this person with a personality defect would be countless times more cruel than the torture that they inflicted on others in their life. This was the only thing that could be ascertained. After Clementine was escorted into the large tomb of Nasarik by the monsters, Noah walked forward and came in front of the pearl of death that Kadjit had thrown on the ground. He bent down and picked it up. At this moment, the pearl of death in Noah's hand flashed with a faint light. Then, Noah heard it. A voice suddenly rang out in his head. "Greetings, great lord of the tomb. I offer you the highest respect." The sudden voice startled Noah. Then, he realized something and looked at the pearl of death in his hand. Looking at the pearl of death that was emitting a faint light in his hand, Noah narrowed his eyes and said softly, "Was it you who spoke just now?" Under Noah's gaze, the voice from just now sounded in Noah's mind again. "Yes, great lord of the tomb. Please allow me to introduce myself. I am the pearl of death, an extremely rare item of wisdom in this world. Please advise me." Intelligent item? Noah held the pearl tightly in his hand. In other words, although you are a magical item, you have intelligence? That's right. The voice in Noah's mind sounded a little proud. Although I can't say that I am unique, but until now, I have never seen a second item with intelligence like me. Hearing this, Noah was more or less surprised. There were too many magic items in the underground tomb of Nasarik to count. Among them, there were many treasures that were absolutely precious to this world. Some were even treasures that only existed in myths and legends. But even with so many treasures, there was not one that could be like the Pearl of Death, which had its own intelligence. However, in the next second, Noah regained his calm. After all, this was a world where magic prevailed. Using magic, it was not difficult to seal a soul in an item and let the item have intelligence. "Then, what is your purpose in talking to me?" Noah asked with interest. "Don't tell me you want to recognize me as your master or something." "Yes, great lord of the tomb." The voice in Noah's mind began to carry a tone of respect and flattery. An intelligent tool like this one should naturally be used by the most outstanding person. Your strength has convinced this one, so please accept this one's loyalty and allow this one to work for you, great lord of the graveyard. Hearing this, Noah's heart was filled with disdain. Used by the most outstanding person? Was someone like Kadjit the most outstanding person? Definitely not. However, didn't this Pearl of Death still work for Kadjit? In other words, this so-called intelligent tool was simply a tool that spoke human language to people and ghosts. Originally, Noah was slightly interested in it. But now, Noah's interest in it had fallen to the lowest point. Just as Noah was about to say something, in Noah's mind, an emotionless but pleasing young voice suddenly appeared. "No need." As the voice sounded, the small silver sword on Noah's back emitted a blinding light. "Master, you have me, the holy sword that can kill the Demon King. You don't need me to pick up something from the side of the road." As soon as he finished speaking, the dazzling light emitted from the small silver sword shot towards the Pearl of Death, causing the pitch-black light on the pearl of death to tremble and let out a miserable shriek. In the next second, the round pearl in Noah's hand lost its light and the voice from before disappeared without a trace. Noah almost laughed. This asked her, why was he jealous of a pearl? Chapter 1247. Everyone knew that in this world, humans were an extremely weak race. Although humans had built many great cities on flat land, and even established several countries, the fact that they lived on flat land only highlighted the frailty of human beings. After all, flat land was a very dangerous terrain. First of all, if they were attacked, there would be nowhere to hide. Moreover, even if they wanted to escape, they would be easily discovered by the enemy. For the other races, choosing to build a city on flat land without any terrain advantage was simply the height of stupidity. However, humans were a race that did not have night vision, nor were they born with a strong body like magical creatures. They could only choose flat terrain as their habitat. It could be said that if they did not choose flat land, which had nowhere to hide, as their place of residence, they would not be able to create their own life. In this world, there were many races that were more developed and had a more advanced civilization than the human race. However, none of those races could rule this world. Hundreds of years ago, the developed races of this world fought against the Eight Desires King, who wanted to rule the world, and were severely weakened by the Eight Desires King's terrifying power. Compared to the other races, humans did not have any special powers, and were ignored by the powerful races. They did not participate in the Eight Desires King's war, but instead, they survived the war. Until now, the reason why humans could continue to exist in this world and not be eliminated was because of the war from hundreds of years ago, which weakened the powerful races to a critical state. Even so, for hundreds of years, humans still could not turn the tables in this world. It was easy to imagine how weak the power of humans was in this world. However, in such a world, there were also powerful human countries. The Yestage Kingdom, the Bahaz Empire, the Celian Theocracy. These three countries were undoubtedly very rare human countries. Although there were also human countries in other places, those countries were either scattered all over the world and were threatened by various powerful races, or they were simply reduced to ranches of carnivorous demon countries and were raised like livestock. Their situation was extremely miserable. As such, the kingdoms, empires, and theocracies were undoubtedly in a much better situation than the other human countries. Among these three human countries, the most powerful one was undoubtedly the theocracy. This could be seen from the capital of the theocracy alone. There were many breathtaking sceneries here. One of them was that almost all the roads were paved with bricks and stones. This was a scene that could not be seen in the neighboring countries. Think about the royal capital of a kingdom. The ground there was mostly bumpy, and the kingdom was not strong enough to pave the roads of the entire city with bricks and tiles. Of course, the reason for this situation was also because of the kingdom's internal and external troubles, as well as the gradual decay of the regime. Apart from the theocracy, the imperial capital of the empire also had extremely advanced stone paths, but the theocracy was still superior. If one were to look down from the sky above the capital of the theocracy, they would be able to clearly see that there was a central avenue that was directly connected to the highway. Just like a normal road, the center was for carriages and horses to pass through while the two sides were sidewalks. The difference was that there were many small guardrails between the road and the sidewalk to ensure the safety of pedestrians. Street lamps stood on both sides of the road. At night, the street lamps lit up with magical light, illuminating the entire capital. Apart from this, there were also many people dressed as soldiers patrolling the capital, giving off a sense of vitality. This was a scene that could not be seen in a kingdom. At the very least, Noah, who had been to the royal capital once and clearly knew about the decay and corruption there, was very sure of this. Floating in the air and looking down at the bustling city full of vitality, Noah could not help but sigh. As expected of a country with players as its backing, the degree of prosperity is not something that kingdoms or empires can compare to. Although that was what he said, Noah's eyes flashed with cold emotions as he looked down at the capital of the silent theocracy. After capturing Clementine alive and torturing her, Noah was able to obtain information that led him to this place. Today, it was time for Noah to settle the score with the people of the silent theocracy. Apart from Noah, the strongest fighting force in Nazarik's underground tomb had all arrived. Among all the guardians, Zaisha was the strongest in duels. Among all the guardians, Cositas was the strongest in attack. Among all the guardians, Yon was the strongest in group battles. Among all the guardians, Ma Lei was the strongest in magic. Among all the guardians, Demi-Yugos was the strongest in wisdom. Among all the guardians, Yair-Bade was the strongest in defense. A group of the strongest fighting force in Nazarik's underground tomb floated around Noah, surrounding Noah in the middle and standing against the wind. Era. Zaisha spoke in a somewhat pitiful voice. If you look at it from this perspective, humans are really like ants. There's something wrong with what you just said, Shadia. Yair-Bade smiled gently. No matter how you look at it, humans are just ants. However, even ants like these can still receive Lord Noah's mercy. Yon laughed. However, they don't understand this at all. Although it's a bit pitiful, Ma Lei held his staff tightly and said timidly. But as expected, those who can't understand Lord Noah's kindness are all wrong. A human country? Cosita spat out white gas. It's a pity to destroy it after developing to this extent. The most pitiful thing is that mere humans dare to offend our sovereign. Demi-Yugos pushed up his glasses. No matter how prosperous the city is, it will turn into the dust of history at this moment. The other guardians nodded one after another. Their eyes were filled with coldness and killing intent as they looked down. Especially Zaisha. A bloody light flashed in her scarlet eyes. It was more terrifying than anything else. You dare to control me and make me betray Lord Noah and suffer such humiliation. Zaisha's cute face was twisted with rage. I'll never let you off. Noah's eyes flashed as he sensed the killing intent and evil aura surging from Zaisha's body. He said indifferently, all of you can leave first. After saying that, Noah did not give the guardians a chance to reply. He walked past them as though he was walking in the air and headed towards the capital of the Seal Yen cult nation. As Noah walked step by step in the air towards the capital of the Seal Yen cult nation as though he was walking on invisible ground, an almost inaudible commotion began to spread in the sky above the capital. If it were an ordinary person, they would definitely not be able to discover it, right? In the sky above the capital of the Seal Yen cult nation, there were figures that could not be seen at all. They were the Seal Yen cult nation soldiers who used both flight and invisibility spells. In this world, since there was a spell like flight, they naturally had to guard against attacks from the sky. These soldiers who used both flight and invisibility spells were precisely the troops that were specially prepared to guard against air attacks. Now, Noah's appearance naturally aroused the vigilance of these soldiers. Noah, who had a superb sensing ability, could clearly sense it. In the sky above the capital of the Seal Yen cult nation, invisible auras were surrounding him. Feeling the auras surrounding him, Noah smiled slightly, but there was no smile in his eyes. As though he did not notice the invisible soldiers, Noah slowly walked in the air while closing his eyes. At this moment, in Noah's heart, a stone plate with 10 patterns on its outline suddenly trembled. On it, a pattern flashed. It had been more than a month since he came to this world. In such a situation where he had not experienced it for a long time, the familiar power turned into a scorching torrent and roared in Noah's body. Bang! An astonishing divine power surged from Noah's body. Chapter 1248. At this moment, the energy source in Noah's body had been transformed into divine power, causing the surging divine power to surge out from his body like a raging wave, turning into a substantial golden airwave that spread out in all directions. The substantial golden airwave was like a shock wave that could be seen with the naked eye. It spread out in an extremely violent manner towards the surroundings. Suddenly, not far away, the guardians of the underground tomb in Nasarik were all caught off guard by the sudden violent shockwave, and all of them turned pale with fright. Almost subconsciously, the guardians raised their hands and blocked in front of them, as though they were walking in a storm, maintaining their figures with great difficulty. As for the soldiers of the Seal Yen cult who were surrounding Noah, they could not even put up the slightest bit of resistance. They could not even react in time, and all of them were shocked by the sudden violent shockwave. Boom! Accompanied by a muffled explosion, the soldiers of the Seal Yen cult who had used the invisibility spell to hide their figures were shaken to the point of revealing their figures. Amidst a series of screams, they were sent flying in all directions. Hence, the golden airwave that was like a shockwave wreaked havoc in the sky above the Seal Yen cult like a storm, instantly attracting the attention of the people of the Seal Yen cult. As the center of the golden airwave storm, Noah, whose robes were fluttering in the wind, naturally became extremely conspicuous. That. Who is that? What is that? A golden storm? What's going on? Did something happen? The entire capital of the Seal Yen cult was suddenly thrown into chaos. Under such circumstances, in the center of the capital below, from a huge building that looked like a palace, a dense crowd of soldiers began to surge out. Among them, there were even many magic chanters who were dressed as priests and had activated the flight spell, flying directly towards the sky. Standing in the center of the golden storm, Noah looked down at the dense crowd of Seal Yen cult soldiers and magic chanters who were flying towards him like a swarm of locusts. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well. In his heart, the pattern that lit up bloomed with a dazzling light. I will use these words to provoke the gods above, to use this magic, to chant this incantation, to make everything in the world bow and kneel. The voice of the incarnation named priest reverberated in everyone's heart, and the light fluctuations spread throughout the world. Then Noah spoke. Get down. 2 simple words, yet it caused the violent surging golden airwaves to transform into a tide, rippling outwards and instantly enveloping the entire capital of the Seal Yen theocracy. Then the densely packed Seal Yen cult soldiers and magic chanters that were swarming towards Noah like a swarm of locusts froze in mid-air. Immediately afterwards, as if they were suppressed by an invisible force, the soldiers and magic chanters fell to the ground at a speed faster than when they came, and wailed in pain as they hit the ground. At this moment, the entire Seal Yen cult was in a panic. No matter how stupid they were, they all realized it. The man who was floating in mid-air and turned into the center of the golden storm was definitely not someone who could be taken down easily. At this moment, in the capital of the Seal Yen cult, every one of those who had the ability to be called a powerhouse had an ominous premonition. Their instincts told them. Today, the Seal Yen cult was going to suffer a terrible disaster. Such instincts turned into reality in the next second. I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000 with 100, 10,000 with 1,000, and 10,000 with 10,000. Now for me who is on the side of justice, please shine brightly and bestow me with divine power. The brand new voice turned into a sound wave, rippling across the entire Seal Yen cult. Following the rumbling sound, the originally clear sky above the Seal Yen cult nation was suddenly filled with dark clouds. Like a whirlpool, the clouds surged and swirled in the sky above the entire city. Rumble! In the next second, streaks of lightning and thunder suddenly exploded from the pitch-black clouds in the sky, bringing along an extremely oppressive and terrifying pressure, causing the entire Seal Yen cult nation to fall into a state of panic. Many of the powerhouses and higher-ups of the Seal Yen cult looked at the raging winds, dark clouds, lightning flashing, and thunder rumbling in the sky in horror. Their bodies started to tremble. Under such a sky, Noah was like a god, looking down at the capital of the Seal Yen cult with the dark clouds in the background as he spun crazily like a whirlpool. In that pair of dark and deep eyes, there was no pity at all. In order to kill good Jefu, the Seal Yen cult was willing to use an entire innocent village as a sacrifice and wantonly slaughter. In order to achieve their goal, this cult that worshipped the supremacy of humans and advocated for the elimination of other races did not hesitate to disregard good and evil, treating all races other than humans as targets for slaughter. In this cult, demi-humans like the forest elves, half-elves, and dark elves were all sold as slaves. Such racial discrimination was just repeating what the other races did to humans. In Noah's eyes, it was not worthy of worship at all. In addition to the matter of Zaisha, the difference in ideology, as well as the new enmity and old hatred, this outcome had long been predestined. Repent in the midst of destruction. Leaving behind this sentence that disappeared with the wind, Noah raised one hand. Rumble! In the sky, in the dark clouds that spun crazily like a whirlpool, all the lightning flashed and thunder rumbled at this moment, turning into violent thunderbolts. Amidst the wailing of the atmosphere, the thunderbolts covered the entire sky and shrouded the capital of the Seal Yen cult below. This was the sound of the thunderbolts descending from the sky, instantly destroying buildings. This was the sound of countless broken bricks and rubble being sent flying by the impact of the thunderbolts descending from the sky. Dong! This was the sound of houses and buildings collapsing. Kacha kacha kacha! This was the sound of the ground cracking inch by inch under the devastation of the violent thunderbolts. In an instant, the entire capital of the Seal Yen cult was shrouded in the violent thunderbolts descending from the sky. Under the bombardment of the thunderbolts, It gradually turned into dust. Oh my God! God! The end of the world! The end of the world is here! God! Please save us! Save us! Under the devastation of the violent thunderbolts, the people who were fleeing in fear one by one sent out the most important prayer of their lives to the 6 gods that they believed in. What they received was the thunderbolts descending from the sky once again, destroying the buildings in the capital one by one. Rumble! The city walls around the capital finally collapsed under the bombardment of the violent lightning. In the capital of the Sealian cult, the people could only flee for their lives, letting their screams and wails resound through the entire space. That scene was like hell. Not far away, the guardians of Nazarik's underground graveyard looked at Noah, who stood in the wind like a god above the capital. With a raise of his hand, he could change the color of the sky and earth, causing violent lightning to descend, and causing a bustling city to gradually turn into ruins. Intense shock surged in their hearts. Looking at the people in the city below who could only flee for their lives in hellish despair, even the guardians of the great underground tomb in Nasarik couldn't help but turn pale. Under such a power of heaven and earth, every guardian recognized their own helplessness. Even these people who were at the maximum level of 100 could only feel powerless, let alone the people in the city below who could only tremble and wail under such power. However, if someone were to observe carefully, they would notice. Even though the entire city was shrouded in the dark clouds of lightning and thunder, and was being ravaged by the violent thunderbolts descending from the sky, none of the ordinary people were harmed. After all, to the ordinary people, the actions and decisions of the upper echelons of the Sealian cult had nothing to do with them. Noah's goal was not to massacre without regard for anything, but to punish the culprits. After taking one last look at the city that had fallen into hell and was gradually turning into ruins, Noah turned around. Let's go back. The guardians woke up one by one and quickly responded respectfully. Yes. Chapter 1249. Nasarik Underground Tomb. Surface Graveyard. 1. Thick darkness suddenly emerged from the space in the center of the tomb. It condensed together, turning into a door-like fog and stabilizing. It was the 10th grade spell, Teleportation Door, that had no distance restrictions and a 0 failure rate of teleportation. With Noah in the lead, a group of guardians of the Nasarik underground tomb slowly walked out of the black fog-like door and appeared on the surface graveyard of the Nasarik underground tomb. Apart from Noah, everyone else was in a daze. Clearly, they hadn't been able to react to the destructive power of heaven and earth just now. However, when they came to their senses, the guardians of the underground tomb in Nasarik looked at Noah with only admiration and pride left in their eyes. A person with such divine power was actually the supreme ruler of the Nasarik underground tomb. Who would not feel admiration and pride for the person whom the guardians were loyal to? Especially Yarel Bede and Zatia, who looked at Noah with extremely strong love in their eyes. They were just short of confessing on the spot and asking for Noah's favor. On the contrary, the person who had just used the power of authority to turn the entire Sealian theocracy into ruins muttered thoughtfully as he walked forward as if nothing had happened. Those players haven't appeared yet. Ibaru had said that the 6 gods of the Sealian theocracy were all players. However, those players had only arrived in this world a few hundred years ago. Even so, it wasn't impossible that the 6 great gods were still alive. In Yggdrasil, the races that players could choose from were roughly divided into 3 types: humans, subhumans, and mutants. The basic races of humans were humans, dwarves, forest elves, and so on. The basic races of subhumans were goblins, orcs, ogres, and so on. The basic races of mutants were skeletons, zombies, vampires, and so on. Including the high-grade races, there were more than 700 races in Yggdrasil. Since the 6 gods who had arrived a few hundred years ago had helped the humans establish a country where humans were supreme, then it was very likely that they were humans. Since they were humans, they should have all died after hundreds of years. However, if the 6 great gods were from some of the higher races of the human race or had a profession with a special lifespan setting, it was not impossible for them to still be alive. Besides, even if they didn't, since there were precious items in Nazarik's graveyard that could change one's race and class, there was a high possibility that the 6 gods also had the same item. That way, as long as they changed to long-lived races and ranks, the 6 great gods would be able to continue living. Because of this, Noah was prepared to fight the 6 great gods, but the 6 great gods did not appear. Does it really not exist anymore? Or did he hide when he saw that the situation was not good? Noah muttered thoughtfully. If I had known earlier, I would have delayed and not used my authority right away. That being said, even if the 6 great gods appeared, what could they do? In the hands of Noah, who could already use authority. Even if there were tens of thousands of level 100 players, it would only take one move to destroy them. What Noah really cared about was the fact that these players had come to this world. 8 desires king. 6 great gods. Demon god. If these existences really came to this world when the 2 worlds connected, then why didn't Gaia and Alea discover it? Or did Gaia and Alea discover it but did not say anything? No. Gaia and Alea did not hide it from Noah. Then, did something unexpected happen? Noah sighed, then raised his head and looked at the sky. All right, I'll leave for a while. Noah's purpose in coming to this world was to prevent the existence of Nazarik's graveyard from affecting the current world. However, since this world had welcomed many players hundreds of years ago, and even allowed the magic, professions, and items in Yggdrasil to flourish in this world, then Noah's worries were unnecessary. After all, magic, professions, items, and other factors were prevalent in this world, causing the entire society to change qualitatively. If this world didn't have any negative effects, then no matter how much trouble Nazarik's underground tomb caused in this world, it shouldn't have any effect. In that case, Noah did not need to worry about whether the existence of Nazarik's graveyard would affect the world. Thus, Noah said to the guardians of Nazarik's graveyard without looking back. Next, I'll leave this place for a while. I'll leave the rest of Nazarik's graveyard to you guys. Hearing this, the guardians of Nazarik's graveyard were startled at first, then they nodded one by one. Understood, Yerbade said in a formal tone. We'll arrange for escorts. Obviously, the guardians thought that Noah intended to go to the capital of the kingdom or somewhere else like before. Little did they know that Noah intended to leave this world. Thus, Noah shook his head and said, "There's no need to arrange for escorts. There's no need to arrange guards. I'll be fine by myself." At this moment, the guardians of Nazarik's graveyard objected. How can this be? How can Lord Noah not have any attendants by his side? Yes. That's right. It's not right to let the Supreme Venerable travel alone. Although we know that our power is too insignificant for Lord Noah, this power still has to be given to the Supreme Venerable that we are loyal to. Zaisha, Yerbade, Mare, Cossets, and Demiugos all expressed their thoughts. I think so too, Yerbade also said. No matter what, it's not right to let the Supreme Venerable travel alone. Even with Lord Noah's power, there's no one in this world who can compare to you. However, if you have to personally deal with those weak ants, it's too shameful. Please allow us to accompany you. The guardians of Nazarik's graveyard all nodded vigorously. It was obvious that due to their excessive loyalty, the guardians couldn't bear to see Noah leave Nasarik alone and go to the great graveyard. In response, Noah could only smile bitterly. I know that you have good intentions, but the place I want to go is rather special. It's not possible to bring you with me, so please forgive me. Saying this, Noah smiled faintly as he gently stroked the small silver sword on his waist. Moreover, I'm not traveling alone. Aster is with me. Isn't that right? After hearing Noah's words, the guardians finally remembered Aster's existence. It wasn't that Aster's presence was weak, but rather that Aster had never interacted with the people of Nazarik's graveyard before. Naturally, it was easy to overlook him. However, even if they remembered that Aster was with Noah, the guardians of Nazarik's graveyard were still a little worried. All right, you don't have to worry. Noah could only shrug. Just like you said, with my abilities, it's not that easy for something to happen to me. Moreover, Nazarik's graveyard is in a period of rapid development. It can't do without your presence. The guardians of Nazarik's graveyard could only helplessly nod. Then, Yerbade said with great reluctance, "When do you plan to leave?" "When I leave." Noah stroked his chin and smiled. "Today, I'll take a look at the various operations of Nasarik." Hearing Noah's words, the guardians of Nazarik's graveyard looked at each other. After a while, it was unknown if they had reached some sort of consensus, but Yerbade and Demiugos nodded at the same time, causing the expressions of Zaisha, Yal, Mare, and Cossets to ease up slightly. Chapter 1250. The next day, Noah didn't seem to have any intention of leaving and woke up naturally. Aster also acted as if nothing had happened and walked out of the bedroom hand in hand with Noah. "Are you leaving now?" Aster asked softly with his usual emotionless tone. "Aren't you going to say goodbye to others? Anyway, if I have the chance to come back next time, it's only been a month." Noah patted Aster's head. "Or Aster, are you reluctant to leave this place?" "No." Aster shook his head without hesitation. "As long as I have a master, that's enough." "You." Noah laughed bitterly. At this time, there was a knock on the door and a voice came in. "Sorry to disturb, Lord Noah." "Ya obeyed?" Noah raised his eyes and looked in the direction of the door. "Come in." As soon as he finished speaking, the door was gently opened. Outside the door, Yerbade and Demiugos appeared at the same time and walked in. Seeing Yerbade and Demiugos, Aster, who was holding Noah's hand, raised his head slightly and glanced at Noah. After Noah nodded, he immediately closed his eyes and his body flickered with a brilliant light, turning into a burst of light particles and gathering in Noah's hand. After a while, the familiar silver dagger appeared in Noah's hand and was pinned back to his waist by Noah. At this time, Noah looked at Yerbade and Demiugos. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Demiugos chose to remain silent. Only Yerbade took a step forward and met Noah's gaze. "Is Lord Noah preparing to leave?" "That's right." Noah blinked. "What? You're still worried?" "No, since Lord Noah has already decided, we won't say anything else." Yerbade shook his head and said this. "However, Supreme Venerable, please at least accept this." Following Yerbad's words, Demiugos walked past Yerbad, took out a backpack, and respectfully presented it to Noah. "This is..." Noah took the bag and frowned slightly. "Unlimited backpack?" "Unlimited backpack." As the name suggested, it was a backpack with unlimited capacity. There was no space limit, but there was a weight limit. Using this backpack, as long as it did not exceed the weight limit of the backpack, no matter how big the object was, it could be stored inside. In other words, at first glance, this backpack was the size of a human head, but even if it couldn't compare to Noah's treasure vault or the treasure hall in Azaric's underground tomb, it definitely wasn't as much as it looked. At the very least, it was enough to be used as a space the size of a warehouse. In Yggdrasil, this kind of backpack was often used to store consumables and recovery items such as scrolls and potions. Lord Noah, this unlimited backpack has been filled with props made by various crafting professions in Azaric's underground tomb. Seeing Noah's puzzled expression, Demiugos explained. Among them, there are short staffs, magic staffs, crystals, potions, and other consumable props. The head of scribe has also instructed the Supreme Venerable to use dragon skin to create the highest level magic scrolls and other magic props. I hope they can be of help to Lord Noah. Hearing this, Noah's frown deepened, and he looked straight at Demiugos. "I've brought most of the things I want. These are all prepared for the underground tomb in Nasaric." In the treasure hall of the underground tomb in Nasaric, Noah had done a large search and collected all kinds of treasures that were useful to him. In the library on the 10th floor underground, Noah had also searched through all kinds of extremely precious summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books. In terms of gains, Noah had already obtained a lot. Noah definitely had a lot of the props that Demiugos had prepared in his treasure haul. Since that was the case, there was no reason not to leave these props for the underground tomb in Nasaric. After all, the underground tomb in Nasaric also required the use of all kinds of magic props. "Lord Noah, please don't worry." Yair Bedard smiled slightly. Because of the large amount of resources provided by Lord Noah, the various magic props made in Nasaric have exceeded our initial expectations. This has allowed the treasure hall to be fully replenished. These are all part of what we think will be leftovers after careful calculations. Therefore, Lord Noah doesn't have to worry about the lack of props in the underground tomb in Nasaric, Demiugos also said warmly. "If these things can help Lord Noah, then it's really the best thing for us." Noah was suddenly speechless. After a while, Noah tightened the infinity backpack in his hand and smiled helplessly at Yair Bedard and Demiugos. "If that's the case, I'll accept your kindness." Only then did Jabez and Demiugos smile. "What?" When Noah returned to the world between, and explained the matter of the players to Gaia and Aleia, The two restraints let out surprised sounds. "That's impossible?" Gaia said in surprise. "At that time when we intercepted the data of that game, undoubtedly, there was only one player. There were no other players." "But it's impossible for Noah to lie about such things." Alea was the first to calm down and said calmly. "It seems that the situation of the two worlds that were connected is much deeper than we thought." "What situation?" Noah asked in confusion. "Do you have any clues about this situation?" "Well, I don't know if this counts as a clue," Gaia said. "Little Noah, you also know about the existence of compatibility, right? According to our judgment, the compatibility of the two worlds that were connected seems to be very high," Alea directly explained. "Therefore, it's very likely that when the world between was in turmoil, the two worlds were also connected, and it seems like it happened more than once. If that was the case, then it was true." Before Noah came to the world between, for the first time, many worlds had been destroyed and became broken feather-like existences. That proved that before that, there had been more than one large-scale upheaval in this between worlds, leading to the destruction of a large number of worlds. Because of the high compatibility, when the world between was in turmoil, the two worlds were also connected, which led to the players that we didn't know about being transferred to the other world. Gaia's tone was somewhat helpless. "As expected, if it's not a world of one's own, even if one can obtain the help of the other world, one wouldn't be able to control the situation at any time? At the end of the day, we are only the restraining force of one world. It is impossible for us to interfere with other worlds. If it wasn't for the fact that the two worlds didn't reject our interference and even provided us with assistance, we wouldn't have been able to stop that player," Alea said. "Originally, we were worried that the connection between the worlds would have an unnecessary effect on the existence of the world between, which was why we interfered. Now, it seems that the compatibility of the two worlds is high enough to accommodate each other. Since so many players did whatever they wanted in that world and didn't cause any negative effects, our interference is unnecessary. In other words, we won't care about it anymore?" Gaia's tone became lighter. "That's great. Taking care of our own world is already troublesome enough. If we also have to take care of other worlds, it would be too tiring." "No matter what, it's been hard on you," Alea said to Noah. "Leave the rest to us. You can continue to collect world fragments in other worlds and increase your strength." Alea's words made Noah fall into silence. Noah sighed and suddenly opened his mouth. "Should I improve my strength? Then, to what extent do I need to increase my strength?" This time, it was Gaia and Alea's turn to fall into silence. "I know, to deal with an opponent that has the ability to bring chaos to the world between, I have to become stronger." Noah couldn't help but speak his mind. "But, is my current strength still not enough?" Since he obtained the power called authority in the world of God Slayer, and completed the great cause of killing God, except for Orpheus of Demon High School, Noah has never encountered a decent opponent. Now with LV4 and the ability value of the SSS stage, Noah has no problem even if he uses 2 of the authority of the 10 avatars for a long time. Even if he goes all out, it is possible to use 3 avatars. Even so, is Noah's strength still not enough? "Little Noah, don't worry." Gaia smiled bitterly. "You will understand the real purpose of increasing your strength in the future." "The real purpose of increasing my strength?" Noah was slightly stunned. "What does this mean?" "It's still the same sentence. You will understand sooner or later," Alea said faintly. "So, you just focus on increasing your strength, that's enough." Hearing this, Noah could only nod helplessly. Looking at the pieces of feathers that were wandering around, Noah didn't know how long it took, but he made up his mind and said, "In that case, help me choose a world with a higher level of strength." Chapter 1251. Whoosh! This was a somewhat hurried whistling sound of the wind. When Noah once again experienced the feeling of entering a brand new world, the sound of the wind immediately drilled into Noah's ears. Some of the fierce wind was like a wave hitting Noah's body, causing a trace of doubt to emerge in Noah's heart, who had not yet had the time to open his eyes. Such a strong wind. Could it be that I descended to the cliff? This was Noah's first thought after arriving in this world. Then, when such a thought rose in Noah's heart, Noah felt it. He felt a sense of weightlessness. The feeling was as if the ground beneath his feet had suddenly disappeared. It was also as if he had been thrown high into the sky without any warning, causing Noah's entire body to float. The familiar feeling of weightlessness made Noah's heart surge with an ominous premonition. This feeling, could it be that I'm about to fall into the rhythm of some big bathhouse? Recalling the scene when he first arrived in the world of looking for a chance encounter in the underground city, Noah's face first turned green, and then he quickly opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, Noah saw it. He saw a strange scenery that he had never seen before. In front of his sight was the horizon that spread out like a carpet. In the center of the horizon was a stunning cliff. In the middle of such a strange scenery, there was a city. It was a city shrouded in a huge curtain. It felt like there were many huge tents forming a huge camp, and the city was tightly surrounded by walls. This was the first scene that Noah saw after arriving in this world. Even when traveling between different worlds, he had never seen such a strange scene. Looking at the strange city in the center of the strange scenery below, Noah finally understood his situation. There was a fierce wind whistling around. The ground looked so far away. On the contrary, the sky that should have felt so far away seemed to be within reach, and the distance was surprisingly close. Coupled with the fact that there was no feeling of being on the ground at all, it told Noah that he was in the middle of the air. Moreover, he was very high up in the air. It was a long story, but the whole process, from Noah's feet losing support, to the feeling of weightlessness attacking Noah's body, to Noah opening his eyes and seeing the strange scenery in front of him, the whole process did not even take a second. So it's really like this? Therefore, Noah only had time to let out such an unbearable cry, and his whole body fell down. Oh! Wah! Ah! Almost at the same time, 3 voices containing completely different emotions went into Noah's ears at the same time. The emotion contained in the first voice was curiosity. The emotion in the second voice was surprise. The emotion in the third voice was calmness. The 3 different voices all sounded in Noah's ears, but none of them were panicked. It didn't sound like they were thrown high up in the air, doing free fall, and the strong wind pressure made their skin tingle. Although there were many things that needed to be investigated, Noah still recognized it. In addition to himself, there were 3 other people like Noah, falling from a height of at least 4,000 meters. As a result, it was Noah himself who had the most real panic. What the hell is going on? Not to mention Noah, in such a strange world, there were 3 other people falling from a high altitude with Noah. It was strange no matter how he thought about it. However, now was not the time to think about this. Feeling the increasingly strong wind pressure, looking at the ground getting closer and closer, Noah whispered softly. Flight. Worn on Noah's neck, the wing-shaped necklace with the magic effect of flight flashed a burst of light. Then, Noah's body gradually offset the weightlessness and strong wind pressure. Like a feather, he was suspended in the air. However, Noah was the only one who could fly. For some reason, the 3 people who fell from a high altitude with Noah were like meteorites, brushing past Noah's side and continued to fall. For a moment, Noah saw the appearance of the 3 people. It was a combination of 1 man and 2 women. Without much time to think, Noah controlled his body. His whole body fell, and his feet stepped on the void. Dong! Accompanied by the sound of the air vibrating, Noah's body was like an arrow leaving the bow. With the speed of a gust of wind, he quickly swept to the falling combination of 1 man and 2 women. And when he swept to the side of the 3 people, Noah immediately stretched out his hands and hugged the 2 girls, 1 in each hand, to stop the falling trend. As for the remaining young man, he could only heavily fall into a lake on the ground under Noah's gaze. Pang! A huge splash followed the fall of a person from a high altitude and exploded. The 2 girls who were held in Noah's arms and avoided the fate of falling into the lake tilted their heads. They didn't understand the current situation, and even the reason why they could now float in the air was confused. Looking at the big splash and the 2 girls in his arms who tilted their heads with a puzzled face, but didn't panic and scream like ordinary people who fell from a high altitude, Noah raised his head, looked at the clear sky and sighed. What kind of godly development is this? A minute later, on the shore of the lake, 4 people landed on the turf one after another. To be more precise, it should be said that Noah fell from the sky with a girl in each hand and landed lightly on the ground. And the unfortunate young man who fell into the lake climbed out of the lake and sat on the turf with his body wet. Until then, Noah saw the full appearance of the three people who fell from mid-air with him. The unfortunate one who fell into the lake was a young man who wore a student uniform from an unknown school. He had light blonde hair and wore a pair of headphones on his head. He seemed to be 17 or 18 years old. The one who was held in Noah's arms was a young lady who had beautiful black waist-length hair, with a crimson bow-style hairband tied on both sides of her hair. She exuded a noble temperament. The remaining one who also avoided the fate of falling into the lake because of Noah was a young lady with short flaxen hair that reached her shoulders. Rather than saying that she was petite, it was better to say that she was simply slender. She wore a shirt-style windbreaker and shorts, looking very quiet, and was holding a cat in her hand. Undoubtedly, until just now, the group had just fallen from a height of more than 4,000 meters. However, among the 4 people present, even excluding Noah, the other 3 people didn't feel surprised at all. Instead, they were quite calm. Even the young lady who looked like a young lady had the time to thank Noah. Although I'm dissatisfied with the behavior of hugging a lady for the first time, but for the sake of being saved, I still thank you. Her voice was very light and pleasant, but there was a pride that others couldn't ignore. The other young lady also thanked Noah softly. Thank you. The young lady's voice was very calm, so calm that it made people feel a little cold. As for the remaining young man in uniform and headphones, he was wringing the water on his clothes while glancing at Noah with an unruly smile on his face. We all fell from a high altitude, and only 2 people could be saved out of the 3. One of them was a man, and the other 2 were women. In the end, you didn't hesitate to choose to save 2 women? You're quite capable, aren't you? The corners of Noah's mouth twitched slightly. Noah just casually saved the 2 people who were closer to him. He didn't deliberately only save the women and ignore the men. His gaze swept across the young man with an unruly smile, the young lady with a noble temperament, and the quiet young lady with a cat in her arms. Noah raised his head and looked at the sky again. After a long while, he let out a deep sigh. Why do I feel like there will be more disasters? Chapter 1252. In the faint sound of breaking through the air, Noah flew into the sky again. With the advantage of being at a high altitude, he looked around. Perhaps because of the height, the horizon that he saw from above 4,000 meters was no longer visible. He couldn't even see the curtain in the strange city. All Noah could see was a high wall in front of him. It was surrounded by a dense forest. At this time, Noah was above a lake in the forest. Although he didn't know where the forest was, being able to find the location of the city so easily made Noah feel a little relieved. Noah, who was observing the terrain, didn't notice anything. On the ground, the young man in a student uniform looked at Noah with interest after wringing out the water on his body. He smiled at Noah and said, "Don't worry, Noah. Hey, little brother over there, you seem to have an interesting power." Not only the young man, but the other 2 girls also looked at Noah with interest. "It can really fly?" The young lady clicked her tongue in wonder. "I thought he used some kind of camouflage." "So powerful." The quiet girl was also a little surprised. "He's just like a bird." In the air, Noah, who clearly heard the words of the 3 people below, withdrew his gaze from the surroundings and looked down. He looked at the man and 2 women who fell from the sky with him and observed him with interest. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. "That's true, but you're just interested. You're not surprised at all, right? Wasn't that right?" If it was an ordinary person who fell from a height of more than 4,000 meters, how could they be so calm? However, the 3 people here all looked as if nothing had happened. They didn't look like they had just fallen from a high altitude. To put it nicely, it was because he was skilled and daring. To put it bluntly, they were careless. If possible, Noah hoped it was the former. At least, he wouldn't get into trouble. Is there anything more surprising than being suddenly thrown into a high altitude? The young man with headphones just curled his lips and put his hand in his uniform pocket. "Well, let me ask. Don't tell me that you suddenly appeared here because you received a strange letter? Since you're asking this question, it means that you're also here because you received the letter, right?" The young lady put one hand on her waist and cast her gaze on the quiet young lady holding the cat. "Looking at you, it's probably the same, right?" The quiet girl holding the cat nodded gently. She seemed to be absent-minded and seemed to be a little quiet. She didn't want to talk at all. Only Noah slowly descended from the air, landed on the ground, and looked at the group of people. Letter? What letter? Such a sentence attracted the gazes of the other three people. If you ask this, it means that you are different from us. You didn't appear here after receiving a strange letter? The young man's face once again showed an unruly smile. Plus, you know how to fly. Interesting, really interesting. It seems that this place is more interesting than I thought. Hearing this, Noah slightly frowned and fell into deep thought. Although he didn't know what was going on, the three people in front of him didn't seem to be from here. They were suddenly sent here after receiving a letter. This was somewhat similar to Noah's situation. The difference was that Noah came here from outside the world, while the three people in front of him were suddenly sent here from somewhere else. In other words, even if there were 4 people here, none of them had any understanding of the current situation. Whether it was the young man in the student uniform, the noble girl, or the quiet girl, they were all like Noah. They were new here and didn't know anything. Anyway, let's introduce ourselves. Noah sorted out his thoughts and looked at the 3 people in front of him. My name is Noah. Noah Doria. You can just call me Noah. A foreigner? The young man slightly raised his eyebrows and said indifferently. I'm 16 Knights of Reverse. You can call me whatever you want. I'm Jo Yuasuka. The noble girl introduced herself in a dignified tone. As you can see, I'm just a girl in distress. Haruhibuyao. The quiet girl still holding the cat in her arms said concisely. Same as above. Meow. The cat in the arms of the girl called Haruhibuyao also didn't want to be left out. Looking at the 3 people in front of him introducing themselves in a very unique way, for some reason, Noah felt a headache coming on. Intuition told Noah that if he continued to stay with these 3 people, it would cause all kinds of trouble. Because of this consideration, Noah decided to speak. Since you don't know each other before, and you don't look like the type who can't live without others, I think we should just go our separate ways here. Hey, you're proposing such a cold solution right away. Aren't you a bit too unreasonable? 16 Knights of Reverse said this, but his face showed that he completely agreed with this idea. Well, but this seems to be more interesting. I'll agree for now. Under normal circumstances, as fellow humans who have come to an unfamiliar place, whether it's from an emotional or rational point of view, it would be more beneficial for us to stick together, right? Juyuan Fei Niao crossed his arms and smiled arrogantly. But you're right. I, Jo Yuasuka, don't want to rely on others. Don't think that I'll cry and beg you to take me in like a weak girl. I'm fine. Haruhibuyao's expression didn't even change. I'm not alone anyway. I have the tricolor cat with me. Meow. The tricolor cat in Haruhibuyao's arms immediately let out a sound of agreement. In this regard, Noah just shrugged. If that's the case, then that's great. Then, everyone, let's go our separate ways here. I hope we'll have a chance to meet again in the future. 16 Knights of Reverse, Jo Yuasuka, and Haruhibuyao immediately spoke up. I hope that the next time we meet again, we won't fall from a high altitude like today. I feel the same. Same. Leaving this conversation as the end, the group of men and women who had just arrived immediately turned around and left without any hesitation. Moreover, they left in 4 completely different directions. They didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation. Logically speaking, when they just arrived at an unfamiliar place, even excluding Noah, the other 3 should be somewhat uneasy. But 16 Knights of Reverse, Jo Yuasuka, and Haruhibuyao didn't have that kind of emotion. They were extremely calm and self-centered. This mentality was completely different from ordinary people. However, it was precisely because of this abnormality that these 3 people would appear here. Just when Noah, 16 Knights of Reverse, Jo Yuasuka, and Haruhibuyao were about to go their separate ways, a panicked voice finally sounded. Wait. Please wait a moment. The moment the panicked voice sounded, 16 Knights of Reverse, Jo Yuasuka, and Haruhibuyao all stopped in their tracks. Noah's footsteps also slightly paused, but in his heart, he knew that this was bad. Sure enough, it's not that easy to leave. This time, I can confirm that staying with these people is definitely going to be a big problem. With this thought in mind, Noah decided to ignore the sudden cry and quickened his pace. Just as he was about to charge into the thicket in front of him, A figure nimbly leaped in front of Noah and blocked his path. It was a girl. She looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. She had a head of water blue waist-length hair. She wore a somewhat provocative miniskirt and silk stockings. Her appearance was quite eye-catching, and she was very beautiful. The girl also had a pair of water blue ears on her head. It was a pair of rabbit ears. Long rabbit ears. Such an unusual appearance made Noah, who was about to leave without caring about anything else, stop in his tracks and blink his eyes. Rabbit girl? Chapter 1253. Bunny Girl. This was Noah's first impression of the bunny-eared girl who suddenly appeared in front of him. The impression made the rabbit-eared young lady spread her arms and stood in front of Noah. Her ears perked up as she refuted strongly. Black Bunny is not a bunny girl. Black Bunny is known as the Moon Bunny of the Hakata aristocracy. Moon Bunny? Noah blinked his eyes again and said with some uncertainty. The Moon Bunny you speak of, is it the kind of bunny that lives on the moon? That's right. The girl who called herself Black Bunny said with her head held high. That's why Black Bunny is not a bunny girl. 16 Knights looked at Black Bunny with a scrutinizing gaze. She looked at Black Bunny's seductive thighs that were exposed outside of the provocative miniskirt and a pair of large breasts in front of her. Then she carefully observed Black Bunny's beautiful figure and finally gave her a thumbs up. No, I also think it's good that you're a bunny girl. That's right, that's right. Joyu and Asuka nodded. It's good that you're a bunny girl. Is it a bunny girl? Haruhi Hiroyuki looked at Black Bunny's long ears with curiosity in his eyes. Is it a bunny girl? I'm not a bunny girl. Black Bunny raised her voice. Please listen to Black Bunny, okay? Well, it doesn't matter if you're a bunny girl or a moon bunny. In short, can you please move aside? Noah said with a fake smile. I feel that if I continue to stay here, all kinds of troublesome things will happen. I have to leave quickly. Move aside. Bunny girl. That's why Black Bunny is not a bunny girl. Black Bunny shouted with a voice that sounded like she was about to cry. Also, Black Bunny can't let you leave. Please listen to Black Bunny obediently. Hearing this, Noah went silent. After a while, Noah sighed. There's no other way. Noah suddenly raised his head after his words sounded. He clenched one of his hands into a fist. Immediately, a fist heavily smashed onto the ground while accompanied by a frightening sharp wind sound. Dong! With Noah as the epicenter, the violent impact immediately carried an astonishing amount of sand and gravel as it exploded. Wah! The sudden and powerful impact made Haruhito Masaaki, Komoto Asuka, and Haruhito Masaaki cry out in alarm. They subconsciously used their hands to block in front of their bodies. Their clothes fluttered in the wind as if they had encountered a strong wind. Reverse 16 Knights also subconsciously used a hand to block in front of his body. He stood against the wind, but a bright light burst out from his eyes. In the next instant, Noah's voice resounded from the center of the berserk shockwave and the dense dust. Well then everyone, see you later. Leaving behind these words, at the top of the thick sand and dust, a figure rushed into the sky as if it was about to break through the horizon. It fled in the opposite direction of everyone present. Cough, 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 cough. Juyuan Flying Bird coughed in the thick sand and let out a somewhat angry cry. Is it necessary to go to this extent just to leave? Haruhi Biao also coughed slightly, but his eyes were filled with surprise. He has a powerful physical ability. Isn't that so? Noah's punch directly blasted the ground, creating a small crater with a diameter of 2 to 3 meters. With the physical ability of a human, that was already an impossible realm to reach. Only Haruhito, while coughing in the thick sand and dust, was still anxiously shouting at Noah, who had almost turned into a small black dot that would disappear in the next second. Why didn't you listen to Haruhito properly? Just as the other 3 girls had their own reactions, Reverse 16 Knights stared at Noah, who had turned into a small black dot. Ha ha, ha ha, ha 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 ha. In the next second, Reverse 16 Knights suddenly burst out laughing. That laughter was filled with excitement and joy. Very good. Very good. It's really very good. You brat. You're more interesting than I thought. While laughing, Reverse 16 Knights turned his head and looked at Haruhito with an arrogant smile on his face. Hey! The bunny girl over there! Didn't I say so? Haruhito shouted almost as a conditioned reflex. Haruhito is not a bunny girl. However, Reverse 16 Knights ignored Haruhito's rebuttal and said this to himself. Don't you want that guy to stay? Then let me help you catch him back. Haruhito was stunned. Without giving Haruhito time to react, Reverse 16 Knights turned his gaze back to the small black that was about to disappear in the sky. With an excited smile, his body slightly bent down. Bang! Like an explosion, a shockwave exploded beneath 16 Knights' feet. Reverse 16 Knights was like a rocket that soared into the sky. It was so violent that it crushed the ground. Amidst the ear-piercing sound of the air being torn apart, it used an extremely shocking speed to rush towards the horizon. On the other side, Noah, who was flying in the sky, looked at the forest that was getting farther and farther away from him, and gently exhaled a breath. Although I don't know why, it's great to leave those three guys who seem to be extremely troublesome. With such a sentence, Noah turned his gaze to the tall wall at the end of the forest, which was the city that he saw when he fell from the sky. No matter what, let's go to the city first and find a way to understand this world. Disregarding Reverse 16 Knights, Distant Flying Bird, and Haruhito Hikari, the girl who suddenly appeared in front of Noah and claimed to be Haruhito seemed to be an aboriginal of this world. If it was Haruhito, she should be able to introduce the situation of this world to Noah, right? Unfortunately, it doesn't look like a simple appearance. There must be a purpose, right? Noah shook his head with a smile. Although I don't know what that bunny girl is going to do, it's better to stay away from here. With such an idea, Noah abandoned other thoughts and prepared to move in the direction of the city. Whoosh! It was also at this moment that a sharp sound of something breaking through the air resounded from afar. It was as if a sound wave had come from the ground below. At the same time, within the range of Noah's sensing ability, an aura was like a rocket soaring into the sky, approaching Noah at an astonishing speed. Noah narrowed his eyes, turned his head abruptly, and looked at the ground below. There, a figure rushed into the sky at an extreme speed, and in the moment when Noah turned his head, it rushed in front of Noah. The next moment, Reverse 16 Knights' arrogant smile was imprinted in Noah's eyes. Don't be in a hurry to leave. Noah's pupils constricted as he saw 16th Knight's arrogant smile. Your physical fitness seems to be very good, huh? After saying that, Reverse 16 Knights suddenly stretched out his hand, grabbed Noah's collar, twisted his body, and faced downward. Come and try to fight with me, little brother. It was like throwing a shot put. Reverse 16 Knights grabbed Noah's collar tightly and threw Noah down. Suddenly, Noah's figure was thrown down by Reverse 16 Knights at an astonishing speed, and with a terrible sonic boom, he fell madly to the ground, rubbing against the air. Seeing this, Reverse 16 Knights smiled excitedly. His figure that was in free fall twisted again, and with a muffled explosion, he swooped down toward Noah, who was falling madly. Above the forest, two streamers were like meteorites, falling from the sky with a fiery heat wave caused by the violent friction with the atmosphere. The sharp sound of breaking through the air echoed in his ears. Noah's figure was falling at an astonishing speed, and his heart was full of surprise. Reverse 16 Knights actually has such a degree of power? Whether it was the speed of soaring into the sky or the power of throwing Noah down, it could be said to be amazing. That speed almost made Noah unable to react. That power made Noah, who was grabbed by the collar, unable to resist, causing him to be thrown down fiercely. Raising his head, Noah looked at Reverse 16 Knights, who was chasing him with an arrogant and unruly smile on his face, and his eyes flickered. This guy is not simple. Chapter 1254. Pung Dash. The deafening explosion caused a burst of thick sand and dust to rise from a corner of the forest and spread to the sky. In the sand and dust, two figures suddenly retreated, opened up a distance, and confronted each other. Soon, the thick sand and dust in the air began to slowly dissipate, exposing the situation inside under the sun. Taking a closer look, there was a meteorite crater in the middle of the two figures confronting each other. It was made by Noah and Reverse 16 Knights when they landed on the ground one after another. Yes, it was made by foot. Because, whether it was Noah or Reverse 16 Knights, They both fell at a shocking speed. Of course, it would cause such a scene when they landed. Looking at Noah opposite, Reverse 16 Knights took off the headphones on his head and let them hang around his neck. Then he grinned at Noah. How does it feel to fall at the speed of the third universe? If I have to give a feeling, it would be surprise, right? Noah patted the dust stuck to his body and looked at Reverse 16 Knights. Then, can you tell me why you stopped me? Well, don't be so cold. Reverse 16 Knights opened and closed his palms slightly, but the smile on his face remained unchanged. It's not easy to meet such an interesting opponent. How can I not vent? Vent. Noah raised his eyebrows. In other words, you stopped me just to let me accompany you to vent? How is it? Reverse 16 Knights laughed. Very interesting, right? Sigh. Noah sighed faintly. If I said it's not interesting, would you let me go? I already said, don't be so cold, right? Reverse 16 Knights clenched one hand into a fist, and a terrifying force gathered in his fist that was undetectable. Isn't it good to play a little? As soon as he finished speaking, 16 Knights twisted his feet, causing the ground to tremble. At the same time, he stirred up a strong impact in dust. With the astonishing speed known as the third universe's speed, his body tore through the air, and with an ear-piercing screech, he shot towards Noah's direction. That frightening speed made Noah's dynamic vision only able to faintly see a black shadow. Noah, who had fully experienced the so-called speed of the third universe after reversing the 16 Knights, did not hesitate at all. The energy source in his body suddenly turned into a source of mana, allowing the endless mana to become a surging torrent that flowed inside his body. Wang. Mana patterns spread out on Noah's calf like electric wires. Facing the amazing speed of 16 Knights, Noah's LV, 4 level and SSS level agility, was not enough to deal with it. Therefore, Noah did not hesitate to use Enhance Magic to strengthen his feet. With a turn of his feet, his figure flickered rapidly, and he strangely flashed backward. After the strengthening of Enhance Magic and LV, 4 level agility, Noah's speed increased to a terrifying level. However, even so, 16 Knights' figure still crossed the void like a rocket, like a maggot in the tarsal bone, and instantly caught up with Noah, who was retreating. The extreme speed known as the third universe's speed could be seen from this. Even with LV, 4 level and SSS level agility blessing, and even after the strengthening of Enhance Magic, Noah's speed was still not as good as 16 Knights. Noah's outstanding sensing ability allowed him to control the charging trajectory of Reverse 16 Knights very well. Noah could only turn his feet again, and his figure flashed violently, leaving an afterimage in the same place, and as if teleporting, he instantly appeared dozens of meters away. However, when Noah's figure just appeared in front of him, a sharp sound broke through the air again. He saw that 16 Knights with an unchanging happy smile, like a bullet, crossed the space and once again caught up with Noah's figure. What's wrong? What's wrong? 16 Knights laughed out loud. Do you only know how to run? Little brother. Hearing this, Noah's eyes narrowed, and there was a little anger in his heart. Although 16 Knights' provocation was very low level, and with Noah's mentality, he wouldn't be so easily provoked. However, being provoked for no reason didn't mean that Noah wouldn't feel angry. So while Noah retreated, he stretched out a hand and snapped his fingers. V-Room. Golden ripples undulated in the space around Noah, and various weapons such as sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and so on popped out from the ripples, all of which were pointed at Reverse 16 Knights, who was charging over at an astonishing speed. Immediately after, the sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and all kinds of treasures turned into streams of laser-like flowing light, covering the sky and covering the earth as they shot towards the direction of 16 Knights. With the speed of 16 Knights' reversal, he should be able to easily avoid all the treasures that were shooting towards him from all directions, right? Then, it would be time for Noah to fight back. However, in the next moment, Noah was surprised again. Facing the overwhelming number of treasures that were shooting towards him, 16 Knights did not dodge at all. Instead, he chose to advance instead of retreating. There was an expression that represented violence on his face, and 16 Knights clenched his fists, facing the relics that were shooting at him. Like thunder, he pulled out shadows of his fists, and his fists bombarded continuously. Clang, 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 clang. The crisp sound of steel colliding with steel could be heard continuously. Reverse 16 Knights actually used a pair of ordinary fists to smash away all of the treasures that were shooting at him from all directions. Wah! Noah exclaimed in shock. He smashed the relics with his fists? That was something that could only be done with amazing strength and a strong body. At least, Hercules, who was in the form of a servant, would never be able to do such a thing. Even if it was Noah, even with the LV for strength and durability buffs, as well as the blessing of the sword, to weaken physical attacks, plus the enhance magic buff, he still couldn't do it. In other words, the young man named 16 Knights' physical ability was stronger than Noah and Hercules. Moreover, he was much stronger. His strength was enough to smash the relics away. His speed was comparable to the speed of the third universe. In this way, it would be difficult for the young man named 16 Knights to use a simple relic to shoot at him. Under such circumstances, 16 Knights, who was using a pair of ordinary fists to smash the relics that were shooting at him, rushed towards Noah with a burning expression. His clenched fists were accompanied by a terrifying fist wind, and he went straight to Noah. The fist with the terrifying fist wind was gradually magnified in Noah's vision. Noah's eyes were sharp, and he clenched his fist. OM! The magic lines that looked like electric wires spread out on Noah's arms. Clang! A dazzling light flickered on Promise's clenched arms. A red gauntlet that looked like a dragon's claw appeared on Noah's arm, and the jade on the back of his hand flashed a gorgeous light. Boost! A voice was heard from the gauntlet that looked like a dragon's claw. In the next second, the fist with the terrifying fist wind collided with the dragon's claw in mid-air. Dong! A deafening and terrifying muffled sound rang out in response, setting off a terrifying and violent shock wave that swept across the space. The shocking impact cracked the ground inch by inch, and then it exploded, stirring up a large amount of gravel. At the center of the impact, Noah's and 16 Knights' fists collided, causing 16 Knights to laugh heartily. Great, great. Very good. Hey, there's actually someone who can fight with me. It couldn't be better. With such a laugh, 16 Knights raised his other fist, and his sharp gaze pierced Noah. Then take another punch from me. Seeing that 16 Knights had once again raised his fist that could smash away a noble artifact, Noah clenched his other hand tightly. Dong! The collision of fists caused a shockwave that seemed to shake the heavens and earth to shatter. Chapter 1255. Boom! Amidst the deafening roar, the terrible impact swept out like a storm, causing the surrounding trees to fall down radially. They smashed heavily on the ground, raising bursts of sand and dust. However, just as the sand and dust rose up, it was suddenly blown away by the storm-like impact that swept around. Immediately afterward, in the center of the impact, two figures flew out respectively, bringing with them a harsh sound of breaking the air. Noah firmly planted his feet on the ground, but his figure still couldn't stop retreating, leaving a long gully under his plowing. It was not until he reached a distance of hundreds of meters that he gradually stopped. However, in the next moment, Noah's expression suddenly changed, and his figure suddenly retreated to the side without any warning. Swish! A figure suddenly appeared in front of Noah. At almost the same instant his body retreated. A punch was thrown, and it violently smashed into the ground where Noah was standing earlier. Boom! The amazing impact exploded on the ground in an instant, stirring up gravel all over the sky and shooting toward the surroundings. Boom, 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 boom. Noah, who was still retreating, threw out heavy punches again and again, shattering all the gravel. At the same time, the figure with amazing speed once again flashed in front of Noah. The fist brought with it a fierce fist wind, slamming toward Noah's chest. Seeing that Reverse 16 Knights was pursuing him relentlessly, Noah's eyes turned cold, and he stopped retreating. This time, Noah didn't dodge at all. Taking advantage of the moment when Reverse 16 Knights punched, he also turned around and kicked out fiercely. Boom! Amidst a neat series of muffled sounds, the punches and kicks that contained a terrifying force finally landed on the bodies of the two parties who launched the attack. Suddenly, Noah and Reverse 16 Knights both let out a muffled groan. Their whole body bounced like a ball and heavily smashed on the ground, causing the ground to tremble. Once again, two more craters appeared. Lying in the crater, Noah clutched his stuffy chest and clenched his hand that was covered by the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear. Using the power of the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, to LV, 4 and the all-around value to the SSS stage, and after the strengthening of the strengthening magic, my physical ability has been multiplied. Even after taking a punch from that guy, it still hurts so much? Even if this level of power was not comparable to Econarolia, it was still much stronger than the opponents that Noah had encountered before. And a person with this level of power, a student who looked only 17 or 18 years old. What kind of person was this 16 Knights reversal? Cough cough cough. On the other side, Reverse 16 Knights also clutched his painful chest, spat out a mouthful of blood, and struggled to get up from the crater-like crater. It hurts, it really hurts. How long has it been since I was in such pain? I forgot, damn it. Separated by a considerable distance, the two people who stood up from the crater at the same time looked at each other, and a strong fighting spirit appeared in their eyes at the same time. Whether it was Noah or Reverse 16 Knights, they were the kind of people who had not met an opponent for a long time because of their powerful strength. Noah was still okay. At least he had a fight with Orpheus, who was known as the Infinite Dragon God. He also didn't use his authority, but he used his full strength when fighting the Black Dragon Econarolia in the Tacit Revelation. However, going back to 16th Night, there were only a few ordinary humans in the place where she originally lived. In that kind of world, Reverse 16 Knights was simply invincible in the true sense, and there was no opponent who could fight with all his strength. It was because of this that Reverse 16 Knights was so excited after seeing Noah's strength. At that moment, Noah and Reverse 16 Knights both showed a smile full of fighting spirit, and said a sentence at the same time. Sure enough, choosing to come here was the right choice. Noah asked Gaia and Alea to help him choose a world with a higher level of power, so that he could get a qualified opponent. Although Noah could enter a state of self-enhancement because his authority had once been fused with the power called limit, the characteristics of the God Slayer meant that he could become stronger faster in battle. As for Reverse 16 Knights, he longed to have an opponent. With too much power, no matter what he did, he could easily solve it. That kind of day without any excitement was simply torture for the 16 Knights of Retrospection. In view of this, Noah and Reverse 16 Knights both felt their blood boil because of the excitement in their hearts. Bang! At a certain moment, the two of them stomped on the ground at the same time, causing the ground to burst open. Riding the wind, they rushed towards each other. The first to make a move was Reverse 16 Knights. Reversing 16 Knights was still the same as before. His ordinary fist blasted out with earth-shattering momentum, smashing in Noah's direction like a bolt of lightning. Noah clenched his hand that was equipped with the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, and stared at the lightning-like fist. At the critical moment, he suddenly leaned to the side, causing the powerful fist to brush past his shoulder and land in the air. Then, Noah also threw out a punch, landing on Reverse 16 Knights' body. Bang! A low and deep sound rang out, causing the ground to be split open by the strong wind. Reverse 16 Knights shot out like a cannonball. Along the way, he directly smashed dozens of boulders and countless trees. Then he stabilized his body. With one hand on the ground, he knelt on one knee and landed on the ground. However, before 16 Knights could catch his breath, an ear-piercing sound of something breaking through the wind suddenly rang out. Reverse 16 Knights' face immediately changed. Without thinking, his body bounced and retreated like a crouching leopard. At this moment, Noah, who had turned into an afterimage, brought along a shocking gust of wind and power as he fiercely charged in the direction of Reverse 16 Knights. Bang! Noah's body suddenly slammed into Reverse 16 Knights' body, causing a deep muffled sound to resound in the field. Reverse 16 Knights only felt that his whole body was impacted by a terrifying force, causing half of his body to become numb. But even so, Reverse 16 Knights still swallowed the muffled groan that rose up his throat and shouted, "Don't be so arrogant." Completely ignoring the numbness in his body, Reverse 16 Knights forcefully twisted his body, and with a quick spin, his knee slammed heavily into Noah's abdomen. Bang! A muffled sound that caused one's heart to shrink rang out once again, causing Noah, who had suffered a heavy blow, to tremble. Immediately after, it was replaced by a ruthless look. Borrowing the power of the 16 Knights reversal, he twisted his leg, spun his body, and sent a kick flying out. Bang! In the terrifying sound of a boulder falling to the ground, Noah's foot directly kicked Reverse 16 Knights' chest. As a result, the two people who suffered a heavy blow at the same time flew out. After their bodies rubbed against the ground for hundreds of meters, they slowly came to a stop. Ha! Ha! Rapid gasps began to sound in the field. Noah and Reverse 16 Knights covered their chests at the same time, stood up with difficulty, and then laughed at the same time. The laughter was very soft at first. However, the laughter became louder and louder. In the end, the laughter had evolved into incisive laughter. Putting aside Reverse 16 Knights, it was quite rare for Noah to have such a performance. At least, usually, Noah didn't have the habit of suddenly laughing for no reason. As for the 16 Knights reversal, after coming to this world, such hearty laughter had become more frequent. After an unknown amount of time, the two of them stopped laughing at the same time. Once again, their gazes met in mid-air, stomped on the ground, and rushed to each other violently. Bang 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 bang. In the corner of the forest, a series of muffled sounds that were accompanied by air waves continuously sounded. During this period, there was also the sound of the ground and the trees exploding. It lasted for a long time. A long time. Chapter 1256. When Black Rabbit, Geo-yuki, and Haruai Hikari arrived at the place where the rumbling sound came from, the scene that appeared in front of the three girls made them stunned on the spot. First, what appeared in front of Black Rabbit, Geo-yuki, and Haruai Hikari's eyes was an empty space. The trees were either broken in half or exploded into pieces, leaving only a few remnants of their roots. The ground was filled with tree fragments and stone debris. In such an open space, there were shocking craters all over the place. The places that didn't have craters were either cracked like spiderwebs or had long gullies. It was simply a mess. Immediately after, Noah and 16 Knights laid on the only undamaged spot in the open space, their bodies riddled with wounds. Both of them were gasping for air. If one looked closely, they would be able to see it. Whether it was Noah or Reverse 16 Knights, they both had a carefree expression on their faces. That expression was like an athlete who was sweating hard at a sports event. They were extremely satisfied. Looking at this scene, Kuroto Asaka, and the three girls fell into a state of speechlessness. After a while, Geo-yuki took a deep breath and held her head as if she had a headache. This place. Is it because of the battle between those two people? It should be. Haruai Hikari nodded and said with admiration. Those two people are so powerful. This kind of destructive power. This kind of power. Black Rabbit was in disbelief and excitement. She clenched her hands and made a praying gesture. Her face was full of joy. If it's them, they will be able to help me. Help us. The three girls had different reactions. On the only undamaged spot, Noah and Reverse 16 Knights were lying on the ground. Their rapid breathing gradually calmed down. You're quite powerful, little brother. Reverse 16 Knights smiled with admiration and satisfaction. A normal person would definitely be dead after taking one of my punches. You've been punched so many times by me, yet you've only suffered such minor injuries. What exactly is your body made of? Hearing this, Noah glanced at Reverse 16 Knights and curled his lips. Shouldn't I be the one asking this question? Reverse 16 Knights' physical ability was quite terrifying. It was so terrifying that Noah had to admit that he wasn't as good as him. If he didn't use Enhance Magic to strengthen his arms and legs, and Red Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet boosted gear to increase his physical ability, Noah wouldn't be able to fight with Reverse 16 Knights. If that was the case, he would definitely die a horrible death. On the other hand, the boosted gear that Noah created using the Weapon Refinement spell could activate the multiplier effect 5 times. Therefore, in the fight with Reverse 16 Knights, as time passed, Noah's advantage grew bigger and bigger. After the 5th time, Noah was able to suppress Reverse 16 Knights. However, even so, Reverse 16 Knights was still able to get up and swing his fist at Noah after being punched countless times by Noah, who had been boosted by the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear 5 times in a row. In the end, because the multiplier effect of the Red Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet could only be used for a short period of time before disappearing, Noah, who had lost the multiplier effect of the Red Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet, was instead suppressed by the 16 Knights. With the support of LV4 and SSS level endurance, coupled with the weakening of Sword's protection, Noah finally made it through. Next, Noah's fighting methods were not limited to punches and kicks. Sometimes, he used the Gate of Babylon to launch a salvo of attacks. Sometimes, he used the cold smelting to temper. Noah even created the White Dragon Emperor's light wings, divine dividing, in an attempt to weaken Reverse 16 Knights by having its ability. However, the salvo of attacks from the noble phantasm was blocked by Reverse 16 Knights' fists. The cold smelting that could temper the opponent and the White Dragon Emperor's light wings, divine dividing, that could weaken the opponent were ineffective against Reverse 16 Knights. That really surprised Noah for a long time. Therefore, if there was anyone who was more curious about the structure of another person's body, it would definitely be Noah, who was more curious about the structure of Reverse 16 Knight's body. As an ordinary human, how could his body be so powerful? Why was it that even the toughening and weakening abilities were ineffective against it? How could he still stand up after being hit so many times? These were all what Noah wanted to know. Of course, it was not until a long time later that Noah found out. The power of the 16 Knights of Reverse Time was called the Truth Unknown, also known as the Body Unknown power. Not only did it have the ability to shatter mountains and rivers, but it could also throw objects at the speed of the third universe. It was a power that could create miracles and destroy miracles. At the same time, it had the gift of shattering heaven and earth, and the gift of shattering power, which were two completely contradictory abilities. At the same time, Reverse 16 Knights also had the ability to nullify negative abilities such as petrification and curses, as well as a strong body that could resist instant death attacks. This was the reason why Noah's cold smelting and White Dragon Emperor's light wings, divine dividing, were ineffective against Reverse 16 Knights. However, even if he did not know this, Noah would still look at Reverse 16 Knights in a different light. In this battle, although Noah used the noble phantasm to launch a salvo of attacks against Reverse 16 Knights, he did not use any of his true name release. Nor did he use Aster. Noah could not do anything against Reverse 16 Knights while keeping these powers. It was obvious how strong Reverse 16 Knights' power was. However, even if he used these methods, Noah did not think that he could easily defeat Reverse 16 Knights. This was because Noah had held back, and Reverse 16 Knights could also hold back. Therefore, unless a month had passed, Noah could release the power called Authority, without any restrictions. Otherwise, without using Authority, Noah really did not have the confidence to win against Reverse 16 Knights. At that moment, Noah struggled to get up and slowly stretched out a hand. V-Room. A golden ripple suddenly appeared above Noah's hand, and 2 bottles of blood-like bright red liquid were spat out, falling into Noah's palm. Noah directly opened the cap of one of the bottles of potion, and while drinking the bright red liquid, he threw the other bottle to Reverse 16 Knights. Drink! Reverse 16 Knights almost subconsciously stretched out his hand and caught the potion, shaking the bright red liquid inside, and curiously asked, "What is this?" Noah did not speak, but drank the potion in one gulp. In the next second, Noah's body began to emit a faint soft light, and the injuries all over his body gradually recovered under the soft light. Reverse 16 Knights suddenly raised his eyebrows, looked at the potion in his hand with interest, then suddenly smiled, opened the cap, and directly drank the potion in the bottle. Immediately, Reverse 16 Knight's body also emitted a faint soft light, and his injuries gradually recovered. It didn't take long for the injuries on their bodies to completely disappear. Kurorobi, Kiyoshi, and Haruhibu Yaichi all let out a surprised voice. "What kind of potion is this?" Kiyoshi could not hide her curiosity and asked, "It's actually so magical?" Haruhibu Yaichi with the tricolored cat on his head also nodded. Only the black rabbit said thoughtfully as it looked at the 2 completely empty potion bottles, "It should be some kind of healing gift, right?" "Gift?" Noah immediately looked at Kurorobi. "What is the gift?" "That will be explained to you later." Kurorobi showed a cute smile. "Before that, let me first express my welcome to you." Saying such a sentence, Kurorobi wanted to embrace the whole world, and opened his hands wide. "Welcome to the world of Hakata." Chapter 1257. Box Court. With Noah as the leader, 16 Knights Retroactive, Jio Yuao, and Kasuga Hibakusha were all slightly startled as they looked at each other. Obviously, no one knew what the box court that the Black Rabbit was talking about was. "Everyone should be able to see the city over there, right?" Black Rabbit seemed to have seen through everyone's thoughts as he pointed at the city with the curtains and huge walls. That is Box Court. Noah and the rest immediately turned their heads and looked at the city called Box Court. At the same time, Black Rabbit began to explain in a lively and cheerful manner. Although I don't need to say it, everyone should understand that you are not ordinary humans. Black Rabbit raised a finger. You all have a very special power in your body. Although this power is different and even comes from different systems, no matter what kind of power it comes from all kinds of asuras, buddhas, demons, fairies, and stars. We call this power that is bestowed by all kinds of asuras, buddhas, demons, fairies, and even stars. Black Rabbit leaned forward and closed one of his eyes as he said in an extremely cute manner. It is precisely because all of you possess this power called grace that the Black Rabbit has sent all of you an invitation letter, inviting all of you to come to this world and play the game with us. Black Rabbit's words made the group of people present raise their brows one after another. That means... Jiao Yuao looked at Black Rabbit. The person who sent us the letter and sent us to this world is you? Yes. Black Rabbit nimbly took a small step back as if he was a real rabbit. You are all humans from different worlds. Black Rabbit knows that you are all existences with the highest level of grace, so I sent you an invitation letter and invited you to this world. Different worlds? Koyoshi Asaka and Haruai Buyao looked at each other with strange expressions on their faces. That. Kasuga Hibakusha raised his hand and asked. That means, other than the world that we know and exist in, there are actually many other worlds? Yes. Black Rabbit gave an affirmative answer. Everyone, just think of it as a parallel world. As long as you know that you all come from different worlds, that's enough. Parallel world. Noah murmured, then shrugged and said to Black Rabbit helplessly. Then, Miss Black Rabbit, how many invitations did you send out? Black Rabbit sent out a total of 3 invitations. Black Rabbit's cheerful tone suddenly weakened as she glanced at Noah, 16 Nights Retroactive, Jiao Yuao, and Kasuga Hibakusha. Black Rabbit doesn't understand why 4 people were summoned to this box court. As soon as he said that, 16 Nights Retrograde, Zhou Yuan Flying Bird, and Haruai Biao all looked at Noah. Because at the beginning, Noah had already said that he did not receive a letter, which meant that he did not receive an invitation from the Black Rabbit. In other words, Noah wasn't summoned into this world by Black Rabbit. Under the gaze of the group of people, Noah continued to ask with a calm expression. Then, what is the purpose of summoning people from different parallel worlds? After hearing Noah's words, the 3 of them turned their attention back to the Black Rabbit. Thus, Black Rabbit could only suppress this question in her heart, and her tone returned to its cheerful state. The reason why you've been summoned to this world is that all of you who have been bestowed with gifts are qualified to play the game of gifts in this world that is specially created for the bearers of powerful gifts to live interesting and happy lives. The game of blessings refers to a game that allows people who can use blessings to compete with each other. Black Rabbit explained. The winner of the game can receive a prize provided by the organizer of the game. Organizer. Jiao Yuao crossed her arms. You mean the organizer of the game? Yes. Sometimes, Asura gods who have nothing to do will organize games in the name of testing humans. There are also forces that organize games for various purposes. Black Rabbit continued to explain. Generally speaking, as long as you have a gift, you can participate in the former. However, the difficulty is very high, and it may even cause life-threatening situations. In contrast, the prizes obtained after winning are also very generous, and there is even a high chance of obtaining new gifts. Generally speaking, the latter requires one to prepare their own chips. Once the participant becomes the loser in the game, they must give the prepared chips to the organizer. Chips. Kasuga Hibakusha's expression became a little awkward. But, we didn't bring anything valuable. Whether it's valuable items, land, benefits, reputation, or even humans themselves, or even their own blessings, they can all be used as chips. Black Rabbit's expression became a little more serious. Although if you lose, you will lose your original power and wealth, but if you win, you can also gain new power and wealth from others. This is a world where everything is based on this kind of game. So, participating in the game of blessings is a necessary part, and also the most important part. A world where everything is based on the game. Jiao Yuao narrowed her eyes. In other words, the game of blessings is equivalent to the law of this world, right? That's not wrong to think of it that way. Black Rabbit smiled cutely. However, in this world, There are also laws that prohibit illegal activities such as robbing or stealing. Using blessings to commit crimes is an unforgivable crime, and those who break the law will be punished. But that's just a side effect, right? 16 Knights Reversal suddenly smiled. After all, this is a world where everything is based on the game. The rules of the game of blessings are the real law. The winner can get what they want, and the loser has to pay the price, even if it's their life, right? You're right, Black Rabbit said with a smile. So, if you're afraid that your belongings will be taken away, you can just not participate in the game from the start. That way you can at least get some safety assurance. 16 Knights Reversal said with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. What I mean is that there's no way to guarantee absolute safety. Can I take it that way? Black Rabbit was speechless. Since there are all kinds of Asuras, gods and Buddhas, and all kinds of powerful beings gathered on this stage, then the strong and the weak are indispensable, Noah said calmly. The strong with power and the weak without power. It's obvious which side can guarantee absolute safety. The atmosphere became a little heavy all of a sudden. As though to disperse the heavy atmosphere, Noah and 16 Knights Reversal laughed at the same time and said in unison, "But, what an interesting world." Noah and 16 Knights Reversal were taken aback. They looked at each other and laughed. "I came to this world because I want to find qualified opponents." Noah spread out his hands. "Since there are all kinds of Asuras, gods and Buddhas here, it's really suitable." "Same." 16 Knights Reversal grinned. "Well, rather than looking for opponents, I'm looking for fun, right? Anyway, I hate a leisurely life without excitement and pursuits." "Same for me." Zhou Fei Niao smiled sweetly. "I'm tired of a monotonous life. That's why I came to this world." "Same here." Haruai Hibu nodded. "Same here." Then. Black Rabbit looked at Noah's group with anticipation and nervousness. "Black Rabbit, can I invite everyone to join my community?" "Community?" Noah's group was confused again. The so-called community refers to the various forces in this world. Black Rabbit quickly explained. No matter if it's the organizer or the participants, they must use the community's name to start the game. So, for those who come to this world, it's necessary to join a community first. Noah, 16 Knights Reversal, Zhou Fei Niao, and Haruai Hibu fell silent. Chapter 1258. To be honest, Noah did not have much resistance to joining any force. After all, Noah had joined various forces in various worlds. For example, the Magic Guide Guild, the police organization, the academy with research, the God's family, the underground tomb, and so on. Noah had indeed joined various forces. Therefore, for Noah, joining any force wasn't something that was worth resisting. However, blindly choosing which force to join was undoubtedly a very stupid thing to do. If there was a force, it meant that there was a struggle. Although, according to Black Rabbit, the box court was a world where everything was based on games, it was not without danger of life. It would be better to say that because of the existence of the gift game, in order to win all kinds of rewards, or even to obtain new gifts to enhance their own strength, the various forces called communities would definitely engage in all kinds of struggles. Under such circumstances, if one did not make the right choice and joined a community that they did not like, being bound by the rules of the community, then it would really be all kinds of trouble. Moreover, originally, Noah wanted to not get involved with 16 Knights, Jiu Yuanfei, and Haruai Buyao, these three people who exuded the aura of problem children, which would cause all kinds of trouble, so he could not wait to escape. The fact that 16 Knights had suddenly found fault with them proved that these guys weren't people who would be easily led by the nose. In fact, they might even lead others by the nose and play around with the people around them. It was because he was afraid of this that Noah was eager to leave the side of these problem children. Now, with the intervention of 16 Knights, Noah had no choice but to be involved. 16 Knights, Jiu Yuanfei, and Haruai Buyao were all summoned to the box court by Black Rabbit. Therefore, Black Rabbit had the obligation to explain the situation of this world to them. However, Black Rabbit did not have the obligation to explain to Noah who was not summoned. Now, Noah was under the guidance of Black Rabbit, so it would be too irresponsible of him to think about escaping. No matter what, he had to deal with it seriously. Just as Noah was thinking about this, 16 Knights expressed his stance. As for me, if this little brother joins, then I'll join as well, 16 Knights said arrogantly as he pointed at Noah. Although there are all kinds of Asura gods and Buddhas in this world, and it would be very interesting to compete with them, the fight between me and this little brother hasn't ended yet. I can't let this little brother run away. Noah's mouth twitched. Since it was to determine the victor, then they shouldn't stay in the same community, right? If they became companions, then wouldn't there be no way to seriously determine the victor? If it's me, I don't mind joining. Jiu Yufei glanced at Noah and said. However, this Mr. here has just proposed a plan to part ways. It's really strange for us to gather together now. But if we just listen to the plan to part ways like this, I feel like I'm being led by the nose. So if this Mr. here wants to join, then I'll join as well. Noah opened his mouth wide in shock. Because he didn't want to listen to someone else's plan, he decided to follow the person who suggested it? What kind of logic was this? If it's me, I can join as well. Haruai Buyao's gaze swept across Black Rabbit, 16 Knights, and Jiu Yufei, and finally landed on Noah. But, if they want to join with you, then I'll join as well. Noah almost vomited blood. Just because of this? Just because of this? Did he have to be so casual? As expected, no matter who it was, they were all troublesome children. However, this meant that Noah would represent everyone present to make the decision. Once Noah agreed to join Black Rabbit's community, then the four of them would all join together. Once Noah didn't agree to join Black Rabbit's community, then the four of them would all leave together. Inexplicably, the decision fell into Noah's hands. Thus, Black Rabbit looked at Noah with a pitiful gaze. Seeing this, Noah could only smile bitterly and look into Black Rabbit's eyes. Then, what kind of power is your community? At this moment, Noah saw it clearly. Black Rabbit's expression stiffened for a moment. Then, that cute face was filled with smiles. That, Black Rabbit's community is a very impressive community. Is it? Noah asked. How impressive is it? Black Rabbit's community was the largest community in the eastern region of the box, divided into 4 regions. East, West, South, and North. A few years ago. Black Rabbit's tone became a little impatient. It was as if he was fighting for something invisible. That look made Noah, 16 Knights Reversal, Jiu-Yuki, and Haruai Hiroyuki squint their eyes at the same time. A few years ago, right? Noah said indifferently. Then what about now? Now. Black Rabbit was somewhat flustered, but it tried to hide it and pretend to be calm. However, driven by anxiety and panic, Black Rabbit's long rabbit ears were already swinging up and down like a tail that was stepped on. Anyone could see the emotions in its heart. I understand. 16 Knights Reversal said with a little boredom. I see. Is this why you summoned us to this world? Haruai Hiroyuki suddenly tilted his head and looked confused. Reason? Isn't it because this world is a world where the bearer of grace must stay? It's not like that, Haruai-san. Jiu-Yuki stared at Black Rabbit with sharp eyes. This Miss Black Rabbit also said that a few years ago, her community was still very powerful. In other words, now, it's completely different, right? Black Rabbit clenched its teeth and was silent. Let me guess. Noah sighed slightly and said. Your community must have encountered an unimaginable predicament for some reason. Either it has declined, or it is in dire need of manpower. That is why you had no choice but to summon humans with the highest level of grace from another world, right? Black Rabbit lowered its head, and the pair of rabbit ears that were originally high up also drooped down. Seeing this, anyone could understand that Noah's guess was correct. No matter what, let me hear it first. Noah said to Black Rabbit. The situation of your community. Hearing this, Black Rabbit raised her head in surprise and looked at Noah with eyes full of uncertainty. That? Black Rabbit asked tentatively. Could it be that you will still choose to join our community? What? Do you think that I will give up joining your community because it's declining? Noah curled his lips. I'm sorry, if it's just the reason of being weak, then it's not enough to convince me to give up. I feel the same. 16 Knight's face once again showed an insufferably arrogant smile. It's better to start from scratch, step by step, and defeat the people who are more powerful than the community I joined. That's also very interesting, right? Noah-san is right. Joe Yuki said nonchalantly. It's better to say that if the conditions of the community I want to join are too good, then I will give up. I didn't come to this world because I want to be a lady and enjoy good conditions. It's the same for me. Haruhi Hiroyuki nodded calmly. I came here to make friends. You heard that. Noah smiled. So, no matter how bad your community's situation is, let's hear it first. After hearing it, we will decide whether to join or not. Say, everyone. Black Rabbit was suddenly touched. Don't be touched too early. Noah raised his hand. We still have to wait for you to explain the situation before we make a decision. I understand. Black Rabbit took a deep breath and looked at Noah's group. I wonder if anyone has heard of the title of Demon King? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.